hard to talk about that day because when I look back, I just think about the tragedy.
911, address of your emergency?
Yeah, we have a missing person.
The woman who owns the property where the wedding guests are staying is nowhere to be found.
I had her neighbor go over there to check on her. She said the door's wide open, the TV's blaring, and you better come over here.
It is haunting and chilling in a way that I'll never forget.
Did you see anything else strange when you went in the house?
Yes. What? There seems to be blood all over her pillow. There's 20-plus guests staying in the big house, and there's a wedding party.
The house turned into a crime scene. It's taped off. The police are there. There's helicopters. There's dogs. All of my friends don't know how they're getting back to that house.
These are all potential suspects in the case. I mean, this is like an Agatha Christie novel, like a classic whodunit.
I knew that something really bad had happened, and it wasn't going to be good.
The draw for Paso Robles is, of course, the scenery, the layout of the land.
The real name of Paso Robles is called El Paso de Robles, which is the Pass of the Oaks.
Oak trees, horses, cattle, and then there's the vineyards.
The Paso Robles area, it is very much the hotspot of wineries in the county.
Just, it's honestly like a fairy tale place to go.
I was born and raised in California. I have close family and friends who lived and grew up not far from here. I've always loved this area. Paso Robles, nestled halfway between San Francisco and Los Angeles, a getaway town, scenic and quiet. But down El Faro Road, in the middle of all this beauty, something ugly took place, right here at this secluded vacation home. The owner of this ranch-style property was 62-year-old Nancy Woodrum. She lived alone after her husband passed away a few years before, and she was really a fixture in the Paso Robles community and ran a popular salon downtown.
We are at Nancy's Salon. This is the Strand. This is where I come every 3 weeks to have her do her magic. Nancy clicked with everybody. She just had that amazing gift of just openness, kindness, just generous. And she passed on her amazing gift to her daughter, Amanda, who now is my stylist.
Do you have a favorite photograph?
This one, my mom and I.
What makes this photograph so special?
We had a special bond. I was her firstborn, and it just really shows that relationship that we had. Sums it all up.
How would you describe your mom? What was she like?
She liked to have fun. She liked to do things. She was active. We were always doing stuff. Going here, going there with the horses, the animals. Oh, okay. You're fine. Okay, all right, I won't move. She loved riding. It was calming to her. And she loved being out in nature with the horses.
You and your mother, you shared this talent for hairdressing, passion for horseback riding, but also a belief in a particular faith.
Well, she raised me as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and she had very strong morals and raised me to be a good person.
Nancy was always a devout Jehovah's Witness. We believe that the earth will be made new again. We believe that God created it for a purpose, and He's going to make it a beautiful paradise again.
Amanda's parents, Robert and Nancy, purchased the property on El Faro Road in 2006. It was a fixer-upper. They were going to have this project and make it their home. But eventually, they decided to turn this property into a vacation rental.
My dad was a contractor, and they made it beautiful. They remodeled it and worked really hard on it.
So you come in, you'd see this 2-story Victorian home with wraparound porches and this willow tree that you parked under.
What did Nancy name the property?
It was called Paradise Ranch because she had the hope of being in paradise, the hope that the Bible gives us.
On Friday, May 4th, this big group of wedding guests check into Paradise Ranch for a weekend wedding at a local winery. The bride, who found the place online, is staying there with her bridesmaids and some close friends. She asks us not to show her face or reveal her name.
We wanted to do a vineyard wedding in Paso Robles. It was a special place to us. Paradise Ranch seemed perfect when we saw the pictures. The main house was very large and welcoming and just charming. And then the guest house was where I was staying, and that was also just very quaint and cute. Nancy came by the guest house and introduced herself. She was very warm and welcoming and gave me a hug, and she was so kind. And she mentioned that she was staying close by on the property.
And then on Saturday, May 5th, you received a phone call that concerned you. What did you learn on that call?
My mom had not shown up for a Bible study, and that was very unusual. I had her neighbor go over there to check on her. She said, the door's wide open, the TV's blaring, and you better come over here.
What did you see when you first approached your mother's apartment?
Everything was there as she left it, but she wasn't there. There was a stain on the carpet. Her sheets and her bedding were missing.
I looked closer at the walls, and when I saw what looked to be splatter on the walls, that's when I grabbed the phone and called 911.
911, address of your emergency?
Yeah, we have a missing person. My mother-in-law has not been heard of or seen today.
Did you see anything else strange when you went in the house?
Yes.
What?
There seems to be blood all over her pillow.
Okay.
There's 20-plus guests staying in the big house, and there's a wedding party. And
there's a wedding party that was there this weekend?
Yes.
I was so excited, getting ready for my wedding day, and a couple family members came by, and I just remember, have you seen my mom? Have you seen our mom? And something about blood, and I freaked out.
I just asked if they had seen my mom today, and no one had seen her.
And what's your state of mind at this point?
Panic.
Shaky and frantic.
Amanda is frantically looking for her mother. The cops are on the property looking for clues. But at the same time that this is going on, down the road, an eagle-eyed officer makes a discovery that could break the case open.
What was extremely suspicious in my mind just really quadrupled. My name is Clinton Cole. I'm a reserve detective with the San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Office. I live in a house with my girlfriend and 3 dogs and 2 birds. Hi, little bird. I usually get up pretty early. I have coffee, I get the dogs outside, I feed them, and then just kind of relax. In 2018, I was a senior deputy with the sheriff's office. That Saturday, it was May, so it was a pretty nice day when I received a phone call from my sergeant at the time asking if I was available for a suspicious missing persons case. I got in my truck and was told that I needed to start heading to El Faro Road. So that's what I did, is I started towards that location.
What did you first see as you pulled up to the property?
I saw this very large white house. I met with the first responding deputy and the on-call detective sergeant. Senior Deputy Degnan came over. He said, "This is very suspicious. Something's very wrong here." I could sense by his demeanor, his voice, that this was not good.
You're making your way around the property, and then finally you approach Nancy's cottage, right here. What's the first thing you see?
I see this door is open as it is now. No signs of a forced entry.
So this is inside Nancy's cottage here. What were the first red flags that you saw as you walked in?
Well, when I first walked in, right here below me was 2 large blood spots.
Blood stains right here.
Right here on the floor. And then over here, there was a bench, and on that bench was Nancy's purse, car keys, her cell phone, her iPad. Her 2 vehicles were parked out there. There was a pillow sitting here, a beige pillow, that had blood on it, and there was blood spatter on that cabinet, as well as on Nancy's headboard and against the back wall.
What are all these signals telling you about what happened in this cottage?
I felt immediately that she was taken against her will.
You thought this was a crime scene?
Absolutely, right away.
While investigators are on the property looking for any clues they can find, down the road that evening, a huge discovery is made that changes the entire case's direction.
We received a phone call from an officer with the California Highway Patrol who had located some bedding and clothing about 6 or 7 miles from Nancy's house on La Ponza Road. So this area here is where items were located by the California Highway Patrol. Those items consisted of bedding, a pillow, a dress, a woman's dress, a pair of shorts, and a shirt. We obviously wanted to find out if they were related.
All of the evidence is brought back and secured in the crime lab annex. When I opened everything up, we looked at all of the evidence more thoroughly. What struck me with this bedding was that there were stains that appeared to be blood stains. The gingham type print was consistent with the remaining bedding that was at El Faro. These items were located on La Ponza along with the bedding, and this was 2 of the clothing items. My thought was that Nancy was wrapped in part of the bedding and transported, whether it be that she was deceased or whether it be that she was severely injured.
We showed these items to her daughter, who confirmed, in fact, these items did come from Nancy's bedroom.
Did you recognize them immediately?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it was her stuff. I think that's when I knew that something really bad had happened, and it wasn't going to be good.
That's when I knew in my heart we needed to find her, and we needed to do it now.
It's Saturday evening, and police are trying desperately to figure out who would want to hurt Nancy Woodrum. Well, suddenly, their potential suspect list gets really long, because returning to the property from the wedding are all those guests staying at the ranch.
There were approximately 20 or more guests staying in this large white house and the smaller house.
These are all potential suspects in the case.
Yes, it's very overwhelming. We have a missing person on this property and potentially 20 to 24 people that could be suspects but have to be interviewed.
Now you have a suspect pool of 20 plus people that you've got to ask yourself, is this a thing where someone came into town for a wedding and became involved in a crime?
I really feel like you can help us, because I feel like you may have seen something.
So you're searching all around the property, essentially every square inch, and then something catches your attention in the driveway?
About right here, I had noticed what appeared to be 2 fresh tire tracks that had pulled in and were in here. And as where we're standing right below us here, I noticed what appeared to be scuffle marks, as if there was a fight between 2 people with their feet. The scene spoke very loudly to me that Nancy was assaulted inside of her bedroom and then taken somewhere against her will. I saw a pillow on the bed. To be honest, I wasn't as focused on that as much as I was kind of the rest of the room. Janine did an excellent job of getting up on top of a ladder to look down. And that's when she was able to see what looked like a handprint.
From up above, when I looked directly down, I really thought the pattern of it stood out as being a partial handprint. The one side that had a lot of blood most likely was against a person that was bleeding, and the other side that had just the handprint was that this could very well be the weapon that was used to suffocate or smother.
So investigators swabbed this pillow right in the middle of the blood stain of the bloody hand for DNA and sent it off to a lab.
I was at the property when people started coming back from the wedding. So yes, we have just this huge list of potential suspects, persons of interest, whatever you want to call them, that had ready access to Nancy.
So Paradise Ranch is so remote that there just wouldn't be anybody else around to have access to Nancy to harm her. So it's logical that you would look right at the wedding party for potential suspects to see if maybe anybody have something to do with this.
You need to talk to every single one of them.
Absolutely. Well, we had a search warrant for the entire property. As the wedding guests start coming and they're being told, you're not allowed in here. Some of them had children. You know, my diapers, my food, my baby's food. The scene became a little chaotic.
Is it even possible for us to be able to come back later and go to sleep there?
What I'm gonna do right now is go find out what the answers to those questions are for you.
What was the bride's reaction when you told her what was going on here?
She was very emotional. She was upset.
I was in complete shock and horrified and could not believe that this was happening to Nancy, who I had just met, and she was so kind and lovely.
It's extremely frustrating to us that you can see how close this house is to Nancy's residence. So you would think someone would hear a car drive up, a scream or something, but no witnesses of over 24 people heard a thing.
Anything unusual happen that you guys noticed in any way with anybody?
No, not anything out of the ordinary.
So the bride is just sleeping on the other side of the wall from Nancy's apartment.
As hard as it is to believe, Nancy's door is here. It was open, and right next door, only one wall separating the two was where the bride was sleeping, and she said she did not hear anything.
I, went into the guest house, and then my girlfriends and I were doing like face masks and stuff. And then we went to bed at about like 11:15. Did my usual thing where I pop in my earplugs and go to bed.
Keep in mind that police believe that Nancy actually went missing the evening before. And then they learned that that wedding party that had been staying on the property, they were at the rehearsal dinner until late that night.
We went straight to the rehearsal dinner. It was at Cass Winery.
Okay.
And got back from that around 10:30. I would say at like midnight, we all went to bed.
So there was one wedding guest that we couldn't 100% account for him being at the rehearsal dinner.
I wasn't in the wedding or anything, so I pretty much just hung out in the house.
So you were here the whole time?
Yeah.
Okay.
He wasn't clear whether he was here, possibly alone with Nancy Woodrum, or did he in fact go to the event at the wedding. And so that raised some concerns, and so we had to take extra time and speak to him again the next day.
We're just trying to figure out what happened, and
I would love to be helpful, but I don't have anything else. This is this is onerous at this point.
All of a sudden, this guy now is like not wanting to cooperate, Usually people who aren't involved bend over backwards for you.
I really need your help. I don't want to impact your day. I don't want to impact your work. We can do it after work.
I prefer not to.
I feel like you may have seen something, and
I haven't.
And so that immediately was a red flag for us, and it was still confusing. We needed to clear it up as soon as possible.
Now, detectives decide they're going to go for round 3 with this particular guest. And this time they go right to his home. And they intend to come back with 2 things, an explanation and some DNA.
We knew we had to get this interview done with or without his permission, or at least try to, and did not let him know we were coming. And we went to the front door and knocked on the door.
Well, how are you?
You want to come
in? Absolutely.
There was one wedding guest whose whereabouts the night Nancy Woodrum disappeared were questionable. So we went to his residence in Northern California to try and confirm his whereabouts that night.
Hey, I just got your call.
Awesome. Hey, just wanted to just ask you a few more questions if you don't mind.
Sure. You want to come in?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm Dave. Good to meet you.
I'm Clint. Good to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Have a seat. Absolutely.
He was no longer resistive. He was very cooperative. Actually appeared to feel bad for the way he had talked on the phone.
We just had a couple more questions to clarify and then just a picture. So, did you go to the rehearsal and the rehearsal dinner, or did you stay?
No, I went to both. Or sorry, I went to the rehearsal dinner, not the rehearsal. I think there were a few pictures on my wife's phone that you can see of me like at the rehearsal dinner. I can show you pictures from the property.
Please.
Like, yeah.
His wife remembered to show us photos at the rehearsal dinner on Friday. So the confusion that he stayed back was immediately erased. It was a very frustrating time for us.
All right, thank you, sir.
Sure. Thank you.
The wedding guest, who wasn't legally obligated to participate in the investigation, also agreed to submit a DNA sample. While all of this is happening, police are ramping up their efforts now to find Nancy. This shocking disappearance makes huge news in the Paso Robles community.
Deputies are expanding their search, asking nearby residents for security footage. 62-year-old Nancy Woodrum has been missing since Friday afternoon.
We're leveraging all of our resources to do the best we can to figure out where Nancy may have gone and what took place.
This search is playing out all through these foothills and along the riverbed.
There's a riverbed right behind Nancy's property line. We had search and rescue search all of this area out towards the riverbed, the exterior parts of Nancy's property.
We also utilize helicopter to come in and search at a high level for signs, bodies, anything like that.
We had a very good group of friends that were very close to us, and they would go out and go search, go down La Ponza, go down 58.
We'd look through everything, the culverts, everything. And what was going through my mind is Nancy's a tough girl. And I know that she's a fighter. And I'm like, she's alive. We will find her and she's gonna be okay.
During the investigation, we developed another lead. So not only were the wedding guests on the property, but we learned that there was a fairly large number of other people that had access to Nancy Woodrum's property at the time she went missing.
Nancy had decided to sell Paradise Ranch. It was too much work for her. She was having work done on her house to assist with the sale of the home.
Why did Nancy decide to sell Paradise Ranch?
Because she wanted to preach full-time. She really wanted to teach people about the Bible and share her hope with other people.
There were contractors, painters, plumbers, all doing repair work to finalize the sale of Nancy's residence.
You needed to talk to all of them.
Absolutely. Every single person that was on this property within the last couple of weeks had to be located and interviewed.
One of the pieces of evidence left behind was Nancy's iPad case. And all around it were pamphlets and notes and numbers. And there was one of a painter, and the name was Carlo Fuentes, and a phone number.
And so we decided that we should call Carlo Fuentes, since he was on scene, and see if he saw anything that hadn't been reported yet.
Hi, I'm calling because we're investigating the disappearance of Nancy Woodrum. Do you remember when you were there on that Thursday? Do you remember if Nancy was there?
Yes, she was there.
He was very cooperative, very friendly with Detective Cole.
Did you see Nancy like having an argument or disagreement with anybody?
You know, to be honest, I didn't notice anything like that. But I remember she told me, "Oh, you're a hard worker," and then she gave me a tamale.
And Amanda mentioned the name of Sean Bloom, who was a general contractor who had worked on the house. And she reported that Nancy and Mr. Bloom had had some dispute over work that had been performed, and it had become quite heated and quite contentious.
How would you characterize the relationship between your mother and Sean Bloom?
Sean was very frustrated. He eventually got fired. He did not get payment, until escrow closed for the work that he had done up to that point. Like, he wanted his money.
Sean Bloom was definitely a person of interest in one of the first couple of people that we called in to be interviewed once we were done with the wedding party.
Actually, I don't like working with Nancy. It's been very difficult. We had issues where Nancy was not happy with our work, fired me off the job.
Okay. When was the last time you talked to Nancy?
It was through an email or text. I have it here.
All the text messages between him and Nancy made no denials about his dislike of Nancy.
And what was the nature of those texts?
Let's see here. So I said, if I don't get payment quickly, I'm going to begin with lawsuits against you and everybody involved.
We're asking everyone we talk to, if you mind providing what we call a buccal swab to see if there's any DNA that might be associated.
I hear what you're saying. I'm going to say, let me talk to my attorney.
So we were like, all right, well, he won't give his DNA without talking to his attorney. 1, he's just being cautious, or 2, he's concerned. So, which is it?
Nancy grew up in San Fernando Valley. At 18 years old, she already obtained her cosmetology license and wanted to do more fashionable hairstyles. And so she commuted to Woodland Hills, where she worked in an exclusive salon. Neil Diamond's wife came in.
She did Kenny Rogers.
She always liked to let everybody know that by 21, she owned her own home and had a Corvette.
Then she met her husband, Robert, who was your quintessential Southern California surfer.
We moved up here in 1991, and it was the 3 of us kids, my parents, and we moved from Woodland Hills to the Central Coast area.
I understand that there were a number of tragedies that struck the family.
So in between me and my brother, Chad, there was another baby, Christopher Michael, and he was 10 days old when he died. He was born with a blockage in his intestines.
And then your sister?
She passed away shortly before her 18th birthday.
Nancy's daughter, Amy, passed away from cystic fibrosis.
Amy was a great person, and it really broke my parents' heart. Yeah, it was sad.
And I understand then you lost your father suddenly.
Yep.
Unexpectedly.
Yep.
What happened to him?
He had a heart attack and collapsed as he was getting into my car. It was hard. It was very traumatic.
How did Nancy cope with all of these tragedies?
She had really strong faith in God and a good hope that she was going to see her loved ones again, and that really got her through.
After suffering through all these tragedies, now Nancy herself has vanished into thin air, and her loved ones are hoping against hope that somehow she'll turn up alive and well.
The family's obviously anxious. The investigators are anxious. They're trying to figure out what happened. The community's interested. Is this going to happen to somebody else?
We know that a timeline is essential to a detective. And about a week into their investigation, they make a critical discovery that's going to tell them exactly the time that Nancy went missing.
At midnight 17, there was a 911 call that showed up on the bill for 0 seconds, meaning it didn't go through. It gets shut off somehow.
Like in a split second?
Like very quickly.
What that did was provide what appeared to be a pretty good time and date stamp on when something bad may have happened to Nancy.
Approximately 12 days within the investigation, we got a big lead. The lab informed us that they had developed unknown male DNA on the pillow that we submitted from Nancy's bed.
They submitted to the state database, CODIS, but no matches were found, which meant that the person whose DNA this was had no record.
To our surprise, several days later, Sean Bloom contacted us and submitted his DNA voluntarily, which cleared him as a suspect.
The DNA results also cleared that wedding guest who police initially found suspicious. But as they started digging deeper into the case, they found something surprising that has investigators wondering whether this was a highly personal crime with a possible suspect much closer to home.
In terms of looking at all potential suspects or persons of interest, there was information that was provided that she potentially had conflict with her son.
I'm going to be honest with you, I haven't talked to my mother face to face in probably 5 years.
I think my brother had a lot of anger growing up. He did not want to be part of the religion that we were in, which was his decision, and but he was angry about it.
She tends to correct our teachings, about God, heaven, big different things, and that's when I kind of just squashed the relationship.
How bitter or challenging did the relationship become between Chad and your mother, Nancy?
At the point of her disappearance, it was not good. They hadn't spoken in quite a while, and my mom was not allowed to see his kids.
But Nancy and Chad were texting each other
the night before.
Right before she disappeared.
Yeah.
And she was reaching out to my brother, trying to just get on common ground maybe with him that way.
He was the last text to her that she had in her phone.
He said he doesn't trust cops and that he's not coming to the station. We were welcome to come to his house and interview him. So we did, and he refused to give his DNA. And he was adamant about it.
Can I mention the DNA sample, so it would just solely be specifically for this investigation?
I've heard of cases of misappropriated samples, and it can ruin people's lives. And unless it's mandatory, I strongly stand by my decision.
So we surveilled him. We watched him drink 5 or 6 beers. He put the empties in the cab of his truck, and then he drove home.
Chad was stopped and arrested for driving with an open container. While the charge was dropped, those beer bottles were sent to the lab for DNA testing.
Chad ultimately was cleared by DNA.
The case kind of did stall because you got a lot of people we've looked into up to this point, and we're not getting a lot of traction.
Was there a point when you felt like you were desperate for news?
Right.
Yeah.
We just wanted to figure this out. I was more than willing to help.
No one knew where Nancy was, and needed something to break.
Detectives are about to throw a Hail Mary. They're going to use a relatively new crime-fighting tool, one this department has never used. If it's successful, they'll be able to find out who was in Nancy's cottage at the very moment she disappeared.
I'm excited. We've got something to go on now.
I always remember Nancy liking the old country music. We'd always be playing music either at Nancy's house or my family's house, and it was a big part of our lives. Every summer they would set up a concert series, and Nancy volunteered her property for this. It just was a music party, and everyone would dance, and she loved that. This was one of her favorite songs that she liked when I sang, and it's called Syrup and Honey by Duffy. Don't you be wasting all your money on syrup and honey. It'd be good. just kind of came to the conclusion that we might never know what happened to her. It was really tough. And it was tough for me, but her daughter and Chad, and her grandkids like that. It was hard.
We are definitely very frustrated. The public was unhappy. They felt like we weren't doing anything. They felt like we weren't working the case. We were working on it every single day.
The case kind of did stall because it came to the point where we sort of ran out of investigative leads. Other avenues had to be explored.
And one of the detectives had recently heard about this novel type of evidence called geofencing.
So you've hit a wall in the investigation, you decide you're going to try something new called geofencing, and this is something that really hasn't been done in California before.
At that time, yes, we were one of the first agencies in the state of California that did this, what is called a Google geofence.
You can put a fence, a virtual fence, around an area, a house, a property, and Google will track which Google accounts, emails or cell phones, come within that fence in a given period of time.
These are actually GPS coordinates that you send to Google.
Yes.
You're essentially able to isolate not necessarily who's on the property, but what devices may be on the property, and that's giving you an avenue to now investigate.
It doesn't matter what kind of phone you have, iPhone, Android, Google is tracking you.
That is correct. As long as location services are on your cellular device, Google is tracking that phone and you.
In order to obtain Google geofence information, search warrants needed to be written and served upon Google for a very specific time period.
Now remember, because of that interrupted 911 call at 12:17 a.m., well, that gives detectives a timeline to work with as to when she went missing.
Then Google sends the results. And what do you see?
What you're seeing here is what we got back.
So this is your first fence.
Some people feel that there are privacy concerns. Paradise Ranch is in a rural area, and there are not going to be a lot of unknown people who are going to be located in this geofence.
So little by little, we're zooming in here. These are the phones associated with the wedding guests.
That is correct. The larger circle here within this circle is all wedding guests, and it looks like there's 4.
Yeah, 20 plus wedding guests.
Correct. The reason their phones aren't showing is their phones are probably kind of in silent mode, sleeping, no apps are being used, so that's why you only see 4.
And just to be clear, this number, this is not a phone number, correct?
Correct. Google assigns each cell phone its own device number. The device number is right here, and that is specific to whoever owns that phone. It's like a fingerprint.
By now, all the wedding guests have been cleared, so those numbers are not really the major focus of detectives. What is the major focus is what they see when they examine Nancy's cottage.
As we get here, that is actually Nancy's studio, and we see a cell phone, what we call pinging, basically right in the wall of Nancy's studio. It pings here at 1:33 in the morning and at 01:52 hours.
And that's the time when you believe Nancy disappeared.
That is 100% when we believe Nancy disappeared.
I can tell you, from my perspective, I'm excited. We've got something. We've got something to go on now.
Could it have been Nancy's phone? We don't know. But what we do know is it's at strange, odd hours, and it's inside her studio.
So this is a potentially huge moment in the investigation. Either that phone belongs to Nancy and it's another dead end, or it belongs to someone else, you get a name, and that person becomes your most likely killer?
100%. Either that device leads us to a suspect, or we are back to absolutely nothing.
Square one.
Yes.
For months, it's been a daunting mystery. Who could have taken Nancy Woodrum from her beautiful Paso Robles property in California and in the middle of a wedding where more than 20 guests were staying? But thanks to geofencing, this cell phone tracking technology, investigators finally have their first big clue.
So this is a key moment in the investigation. You have this huge piece of evidence, a cell phone inside Nancy's cottage. You have to figure out who it belongs to. What's next?
We have to write another set of warrant for the subscriber information.
So it starts the ball rolling, but there's still a fair amount of wait for the data. Sometimes it could take a few weeks.
It's in November. I'm in the courthouse and my phone rings. It's my partner, and they said, "You're not gonna believe this." We got a name of who owned that device, and it is Carlo Fuentes.
A name you recognize, the painter.
Yes, Carlo Fuentes was painting at Nancy's residence numerous times prior to her going missing.
Wait a minute, the painter? Well, this is a shock to investigators because remember, they had already interviewed Carlo Fuentes Flores earlier. This guy was cooperative and mild-mannered, and there was no reason to suspect him then. But now, there's a reason.
We know it's his phone, we know he's there, we know he had that opportunity because he's familiar with the property, he was familiar with Nancy's habits. All those things added up.
There's not a reasonable explanation why anybody would be out doing painting at that time of night. It's looking like he's at least somebody that needs to be talked to again.
So once we get Carlo identified, we need to know as much as we can about him.
What did you find?
We spoke to people that he painted for and friends. Seemed like just a normal guy who had come here from Mexico.
He was one of those guys that you'd want on your team. Worked on and off for me for 20 years.
He just had a good way of communicating, which is, kind of rare in the trades. Seemed very neat, tidy painter and professional.
He was great with clients, very polite and courteous.
Just loved being a dad. He was, loved his daughter, just raved about his daughter.
He was a father, a husband, and by all accounts was someone who was just leading a normal life.
The geofence was not enough to arrest him at the time, in large part because it's simply a phone. It doesn't prove that Carlo Fuentes Flores was in possession of his phone at that time. The phone could have been in the possession of somebody else.
You looked into his criminal record, anything there?
There was absolutely nothing in his criminal record, either in Mexico or the United States.
We found no indication that he had a criminal history anywhere. It was really kind of a surprise that way.
He wasn't in a romantic relationship with her. There was not a dispute over funds. There was simply no connection or explanation for why this normal person would try to hurt Nancy.
Now, this is quite baffling to detectives because their initial findings just don't fit the pattern of a suspect in a brutal crime. It isn't adding up why Carlo's phone was at Nancy's cottage. That is, until they do a deep dive into his Google search history and find something surprising.
You found something unexpected?
Yes, he was doing Google searches for cougar and sexy lingerie videos.
That's odd.
That is odd, yes. As you can see, cougar lingerie porn videos, sexy cougars. This has a theme to it that is tied to our case. Nancy Woodrum was older than Carlo Fuentes by about 15 to 20 years, and this is cougar porn.
He clearly has a thing for older women.
Based on his Google search history, absolutely. As we went further into his Google search history, we found where he was searching for escorts in different cities that he was in.
And did he connect with any of these women?
We believe he did, based on some things we found on his cell phone. We found numerous videos of him having sex.
Videos that he shot himself with various women?
Yes. I would say there was at least 10 to 15 videos.
So this father, this husband, had secrets?
A lot of deep secrets that most people don't have. There was the daytime, very nice, courteous painter, excellent painter, great at his job, and then there was the night, kind of weird fetish, drinking too much, Fuentes Flores.
I noticed after a period of time that he was drinking more and kind of like hooking up with different women. There was times where he asked actually to borrow money from me to go to Vegas and girls of the night kind of thing.
He had told me about a call girl he had picked up in Las Vegas, and then there was an older gal that he was seeing. So I just told him, hey man, you're gonna mess it up. You know, you've got a wife, you've got a daughter. And so I tried to warn him, you know, multiple times.
We needed more evidence to make this an airtight case.
So we wanted to get Carlos' DNA without letting him know that we were on to him.
The detectives began surveillance on Carlo Fuentes Flores shortly thereafter in order to get an actual DNA sample from him.
We used our special operations unit because what they do all day long is surveillances of people and drug dealers and gang members.
Well, we know Carlo is not a drug dealer and not a gang member, but he's now on those officer sites. He has no clue what's going to happen to him next. So now investigators have that geofencing evidence showing Carlo Fuentes Flores' phone at the crime scene. And they've also got his search history of porn and escorts. But they're after more conclusive proof that he did something to Nancy Woodrum, a DNA match to that bloody pillow.
So we followed him, and he went to a local restaurant, had lunch with his wife, and left a Coke bottle that he drank out of on the table. And when it's in a public place, then we can take it without a warrant.
They retrieved this Coke bottle, they took it to the DNA lab, they had the DNA pulled on it, and it matched the DNA that we had on the pillow.
It's a match. And it's a critical moment in this investigation. Detectives are now closing in on Carlo Fuentes Flores.
So once we received the confirmation that it was Carlo's DNA in the bloody handprint, we needed to talk to Carlo. We needed to hear his side of the story.
Yeah, thank you for being on time.
This is the room where you interrogated Carlo Fuentes.
Yes, it is. This is the room. My partner, Dave, was here with me. I was off to this side.
You're asking him a variety of questions. And in this clip here, you're asking about his job painting at the property.
What exactly were you guys painting? Like the deck, the trim fascia boards?
No, it was the deck.
On the big house?
Yeah, on the big house.
So you then start showing him pictures of the property.
So that's what you consider the big main house?
Yes,
And that's where you did a lot of work, and the deck's back here?
Yes.
And you used the bathroom in there?
There was a bathroom in the main house and down below. And then we used a bathroom in this area right here.
What were you trying to do there?
What we're doing is we're putting him on the property. We wanted to know that he knew where Nancy's studio was.
They're looking for things that that person's going to tell them that is not true. And presumably that person has no idea what we know.
Did you know where Nancy stayed?
To be honest, I didn't even know that she was staying in that area.
He was painting for Nancy, and she was nice to him and gave him tamales, and they read scripture together, and then he doesn't know what happened with her.
What have you heard about?
You know what?
What happened to her?
The only stuff I heard, like, it was from my boss, coming from my boss, like, that she just disappeared and that's it. And then we never, like, heard anything else.
So at this point in the interrogation, he's saying he doesn't know anything about what happened to Nancy. But then you start applying a little more pressure.
Yes, that was a plan of ours.
Please don't take this the wrong way, but are you in any way involved with Nancy missing?
Oh, no. No.
Any reason why anyone would say that?
Well, because there's no reason. Yeah, there's no reason.
Now they ratchet up the pressure. They let Carlo know they have DNA evidence, and they don't buy his story.
We've done a very thorough investigation. We've spent thousands of hours on this case.
Because we waited for all of the evidence, we were able to say, no, we know you came back.
We know a lot of stuff. We're giving you a chance now to change your story and be honest with us.
Okay.
If you have something else that you'd like to tell us.
At that moment, in my opinion, he knew we knew. It was no longer what do they know, it was, oh no, they know.
And you could see his body change.
Oh my God. I want to be honest with you guys. I know that I made a mistake.
I could literally see my heart beating in my shirt. There's just a million things going through your head.
But they aren't expecting what he says next. Fuentes Flores admits he killed Nancy, but he says it was an accident when he went to the house to retrieve some equipment.
I went back and get one of the ladders I supposed to be getting for the next job.
He said when he went and loaded the ladder up and he was backing up, he didn't know she had walked up behind him and he ran her over.
So you're saying you hit her with your car, your truck? Okay.
And then I took her back in the place, and that's when she collapsed.
It was an accident. I hit her. I took her inside to help her. But then you start getting down a road where he probably realized he could only lie so much at that point.
You're not being fully honest. Please tell us what happened.
All right. Okay. So I had sex with her.
This was the first time in the interview when my jaw really hit the floor.
How did you have sex with, tell me how that transpired.
You know what? I was drunk.
Did she invite you over there, or did you just show up and...
No, I just showed up there and then just to go and get the ladder.
He said no, she didn't know I was coming over, and if we know it was not consensual and it was a rape and she's dead, then we have a special circumstance murder case.
But what they don't know is, where is Nancy?
Can we try and see if we can find where you took her?
You actually bring in an iPad and you're hoping he can point out on a map where you can find Nancy?
Yes.
And instead, this stunning moment when he offers to take you to her body.
He did.
If you guys don't mind, I would like to take you.
We would like you to do that too.
All right.
When Carlo Fuentes Flores told us that he would take us to Nancy Woodrum's body, we placed him in a car and he directed us due east from the Templeton substation.
So the detectives went in one car and I went in a car right behind them. As we drove from Paso Robles, the journey from the police stations was about an hour. It goes from more arable land in Paso Robles to kind of a more desert topography, out to the Carrizo Plain, which is just on the border with Kern County.
I'm thinking, wow, that's going to be a tough find. When you have something, even buried something in that area, animals dig it up. So you don't expect a lot.
Carlo Fuentes Flores' demeanor on the ride was very subdued, quiet.
I know that you guys just doing your job, and I wish that I could be forward like a long time ago, and because this stuff it has been killing me. Like,
You know, the longer we were driving with Carlo, the more frustrating it was becoming. We didn't feel like he was playing games with us, but this is difficult territory to remember anything, and so there was a time where we felt like maybe he wouldn't remember where he put her.
how far off of the road was she? Oh, it was not far, probably like 100 feet. We can check like this area right here.
You think it might be in here?
Sure, we can check on this area.
I think everyone behind us who was following us were like, okay, what's the deal? Can he find her? The anxiety is tremendous.
It was something like this, and I even remember like there was a car coming, and I had to bend down. And then there's gonna be a pile of rocks around her. Can we try a different spot?
Yeah, if you don't, I mean, if you don't think it's this one, then, right?
I hadn't brought a jacket, and I remember being so cold, and I remember thinking, how is anybody gonna ever find anything in that grass? I remember looking at them just walking in circles, thinking, is Nancy gonna be here?
He had stopped at 4 or 5 different locations.
Here, pull over right here.
And we were unable to locate the spot that Carlo said he placed Nancy. I started feeling like he may not be able to remember.
Seems like a long ways to bring her. Yeah.
Do you think we came this far?
And then we went to the next location, and it looked the same as the first location, which when doubt creeped into my mind again, thinking, how is anybody going to tell this location from the last location?
Was this far in from the road? No, right? It was this far in?
Bunch of rocks down there.
So we stopped about right here. And I looked off over to my right, over this way, and I saw some rocks. Rocks, I don't know, 6 or 8 inches that were kind of stacked in a circle that looked completely out of place. So I turned to Carlo, who was to my left. I said, are those the rocks you're describing? He looked over and said words to the effect, oh my God, yes. He fell to his knees, started crying.
Yep, stay here with me, okay?
I saw what I believed to be a partial leg bone, about 18 inches or so in length, and some other smaller bones, what looked like some vertebrae bones. I could see a human skull, which was right up into this area. About right here, just laying on the ground.
Quite a few remains fairly close together, but missing a lot. And because of the animal activity in the area, her remains could be scattered for a mile. And it made me feel sad for her family, and knowing that anytime a loved one is missing, just the emotional trauma, but also knowing that she was left in such a remote area by herself in the middle of the night.
It always has bothered me that he didn't even have the courtesy to bury her. I looked back over at him and my partner over there. I was angry. This is treacherous wilderness to just leave a body out in the open.
Once he found Nancy's body, his demeanor changed.
Can you do me a big favor?
It depends on what it is, Carlo.
I wish that you can talk to my little one and tell her that. And I feel so sorry about this huge mistake I made.
Okay.
Please do that.
Yeah. I can do that.
And I think he knew he wasn't going to go home again. He was emotional. He appeared to be contrite and sad.
I didn't give her a hug this morning.
And once we had that body, my mind immediately went towards, okay, we have to confront him again. What do we need him to say? And what charges do I need to try and prove? And then when we got back to the interview room back an hour later, then he told us what really happened.
I'm not even lying anymore. I'm just being honest with you guys.
I could see a human skull. After we located Nancy Woodrum's remains, we took Carlo back to the Sheriff's North Station in Templeton, where we were hoping to get a complete story about how he killed Nancy Woodrum.
Investigators already know a lot about where Carlo was before Nancy was killed. And that's because of all the tracking they had been doing of his movements.
This animation shows where Carlo was going throughout the day and evening.
Yes, he's now traveling up to Paso Robles, and there's a church in a commercial building.
Wait, Carlo goes to church on the night Nancy disappeared?
Yes, church was not in session because it's almost midnight, but yes, he pulls into the parking lot and he stays there for 20, 30 minutes.
He was sitting there in a church parking lot, chilling evidence as he's probably pondering whether he's going to go to Nancy's or not.
And now he's way out here on Highway 46, headed towards Nancy's house.
So his phone is pinging along the way, and that's what's sort of drawing out this map and showing all of his movements that night.
That's correct. You'll see the little dots there. He's getting closer to Nancy's residence. So 14 minutes after midnight was the last location data that Google got. The reason that is so important at midnight 14 is a 911 call was attempted at midnight 17. When we got back to the Sheriff's North Station, we went into the same interrogation room and began questioning Carlo again.
So you went into through the sliding glass door?
Yes, that's when I went inside.
He finally admitted what we had suspected. He came into Nancy's house around 12:15 in the morning.
Where was she? Where was she? Was she in bed?
Oh yeah, she was on bed.
Was she awake?
Yeah.
She saw you come in?
No.
And then he starts telling a different version about what happened. The real story?
Yes.
She just asked me like, who are you?
And what happened?
They started having sex with her.
He admitted that he went there with the intention of wanting or going to have sex with her.
And Carlo tells you that he believed Nancy had been flirting with him.
She offered him some tamales, and he took it as flirting, which seemed very, very odd.
It was just something like she was being nice with me, and probably that I took it wrong way.
He hit her to wake her up, which confirmed the blood spatter on the dresser and the walls, and he raped her.
So you intended to kill her so that you didn't get caught for the rape, right? Yes.
He goes on to admit that he suffocated Nancy with a pillow?
Yes, he did.
After you finished having sex with her, how long did it take you to put the pillow over her face?
45 minutes. She didn't suffer. It was so quick.
He admitted to raping her, to smothering her to death, but for some reason, he wouldn't admit that he hung up the 911 call.
And you're sure that when you came in, she didn't try and dial 911 and you took the phone away from her?
You know what? I don't remember. I don't think she did. Yeah, I don't think she tried.
Are you really sure?
I mean, I was drunk and to be honest, I don't remember. I don't remember that part.
How long were you in her house for?
I was at 40 minutes. Yeah.
And what did you do during those 40 minutes after you had sex with her?
I went to put it back on the truck, on the tailgate, and I just drove away.
The bedding that was found on the side of La Panza Road, Carlo confirmed with us that he had wrapped Nancy Woodrum's body up in some of that bedding, that was what blew out of his pickup as he was driving out to the Carrizo Plains.
Is this the entire truth?
Yes, I'm not even lying anymore. I'm just being honest with you guys. Now I have to pay the consequences.
It appeared that he was sad that this had happened and that his confession was cathartic in a way and was bringing him some degree of peace.
Would you be willing to write like an apology letter to Nancy's children and grandkids?
And at the end of the interview, he actually wrote an apology letter to Nancy's family and an apology to his own family within that same letter. And once he wrote the apology letter, the detectives placed him under arrest.
You were under arrest for murder.
What was that like?
It was a huge relief. This clip brings back, a lot of memories of, at that moment, justice is going to be served for Nancy Woodrum.
I could still see the emotion in your eyes.
This was just a really sad case. This case was just a little more personal for me.
Detective Cole presents to you a photograph and a name. Carlo Fuentes Flores.
Okay.
I was like, who?
Like who?
Who?
Who's this?
We had no idea who it was.
How could it possibly be the painter?
Right. It kind of just opened up more questions. Like Aaron said, why? Why?
They found her body. What is going through your mind?
I think there was relief. I just wanted to find her. We needed to have some closure. There's a lot of people who never get answers. And I was just thankful that we had answers.
I mean, it's the worst case scenario, but knowing that we found her and she's not suffering anymore, that was a comfort. But it's still something it's a hard pill to swallow.
It was one of those quiet moments where you start to cry and just, she just got so cheated. Finally got a chance to relax and do what she wants and retire, and then this happens to her. I just thought, how very, very unfair.
Now, all that remains is a trial. Prosecutors decide not to go for the death penalty, but they're confident they've got a winning case. Now, the defense has something in store, and if the judge buys it, everything could totally unravel.
Hello, this is a prepaid call from
Carlo.
an inmate at the San Luis Obispo jail. Hello?
Hello, Crystal?
Carlo?
Yes.
I was responsible for monitoring any jail phone calls that took place involving Carlo Fuentes Flores. The ones that were of particular interest would have been the phone calls with his wife, Crystal.
Did you do this, Carlo?
Yes, honey, I'm so sorry. I don't know.
Why?
I don't know why that day. That wasn't even me. I was like drunk.
Yeah, I know, Carlo, but
They're gonna find
you did
people that won't
you did
understand
like
it.
the worst thing in the whole world.
I know.
You did
But,
a couple of bad things mixed together, which is just crazy. Crazy.
Despite the compelling evidence from the confession in Fuentes Flores' police interview and admissions to his wife in recorded jail calls, he pleads not guilty. And his defense attorney has a strategy that could upend the case.
The defense team presented a very spirited defense centered on a motion to suppress his recorded interview. Carlo spoke English with his wife. He spoke fantastic English, but he was a native Spanish speaker. And so the defense challenged that the Miranda warnings should have been given in Spanish, or he should have had an interpreter present.
We wanted him to understand and make sure that he understood what he was doing. And so we had set it up. Do you understand what I'm saying? If there's at any point you don't, please ask.
If you have any questions, the way I say stuff, the way I ask you stuff, please tell me. It's
All right.
I know it's something that I do. It's probably not you, but as long as you can understand me, if you don't, just let me know, okay?
All right.
Ultimately, the judge denied the defense's motion to suppress and found that the detectives preserved his rights and that they properly Mirandized him and interviewed him in English.
He confessed, and then we were able to find her, and then thought, okay, we're done. Like, this is the end. But no, now there's going to be a huge trial.
So this case is set for trial in January 2022. And we show up for day one, and I see his attorney go and speak with him. And his attorney comes back and he says, well, he wants to just plead to life without parole. He doesn't want to put his family through the publicity of a trial.
Normally in a plea deal, the defendant waives his right to an appeal. But Fuentes Flores wants to preserve his right. So the judge proposes something called a slow plea. The prosecutor will still be able to present the evidence, but in the end, the judge is going to find Fuentes Flores guilty on all charges.
So the judge reviewed all of the evidence I submitted, and I submitted his recorded interviews, his jail calls. I wanted to make sure everything was in there just in case. And the judge found him guilty of first-degree murder and the special circumstance that the murder was committed during a rape.
The man who killed a Paso Robles woman and led investigators to her body will spend life in prison. He was found guilty of killing Woodrum during a rape and burglary, which means he isn't eligible for parole.
He was given an appropriate sentence in prison, so I think in that way that justice was served, although the family will truly never have closure as a result of what took place.
What about the family?
What about what?
Their family. Yeah, their family.
I know.
They're never going to get to see her again. It's just so stupid. So stupid, so senseless.
Aaron, you read the victim impact statement in court. What did you and your family want to say to Carlo?
Just let him know how he changed our lives. You know, not the fact that he took her life for nothing. Just to let him know that it sickened us and what was the point. You know, because now he's going to live behind bars for the rest of his life for one foolish night.
People, I feel, remember Nancy as a strong woman with the biggest heart. She survived a lot of heartaches, and it made her stronger, but it made her heart beautiful. The memorial was probably the most beautiful thing. It was out at a vineyard On the way out to Nancy's property, it's a beautiful place. There was hundreds of people there, and it was just a testament to the person that she was.
These photographs were all displayed at your mother's memorial, right?
Yes. They really show who she was. She loved outdoors, she loved the horses, she loved being in the barn, going camping with the grandkids. She was an amazing person. She loved God. She wanted that to be first in her life, and she wanted people to know that. And her hope that she had to see her kids again. This is the horse that my mom used to ride. Her name is Montana. She loved Montana. My daughter and I now go out on the horses together. And I usually ride Montana, and my daughter rides Fire, so we've passed that down. What I once did with my mom, now I do with my daughter, and that's a good feeling. She was a huge part of our life. She was my best friend. We did everything together. Every time I ride, I think of my mom.
Carrying on that beautiful tradition, David. Detective Clint Cole says he still feels a connection to Nancy's case and keeps in touch with her daughter Amanda, reaching out to her on May 5th of every year.
The following novel is a work of fiction inspired by true events, reimagined. With altered names, locations, and narrative elements for dramatic storytelling. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, or actual locales, is purely coincidental. The Whisper Wind Shadow. Chapter 1. The Golden Embrace of Obsidian Valley. Obsidian Valley was a place steeped in quiet beauty, a secluded jewel cradled by the ancient, brooding Sierra Madre Mountains. Its name derived from the dark, volcanic rock that peppered its soil, hinted at a deeper, more mysterious past. But to its residents, it was simply home. Winding rivers, ancient oak groves, and fields of wild mustard in spring painted a landscape of serene grandeur. It was here on Whisperwind Lane that Evelyn Thorne had carved out her own slice of paradise, Serenity Estate. At 62, Evelyn was a vibrant thread in the valley's tapestry. Her husband, Arthur, had passed a few years prior, leaving her the sole keeper of their dream. Together, they had transformed a rugged piece of land into a charming retreat, a sprawling Victorian-style manor with wraparound porches and a smaller, rustic cottage nestled amidst weeping willows where Evelyn now resided. She christened it Serenity Estate, a name that echoed her deep faith and unwavering hope. Evelyn was a devout follower of the path of illumination, believing in a future paradise restored on earth, a vision she often shared with anyone who would listen, her eyes alight with conviction. Her Glimmer Salon, located in the heart of Obsidian Valley's quaint downtown, was more than just a place for haircuts. It was a community hub, a confessional booth, a stage for Evelyn's infectious laughter and compassionate wisdom. She possessed that rare gift of making everyone feel seen, valued, and beautiful, both inside and out. Celeste Thorne, Evelyn's eldest daughter, inherited her mother's golden touch. An empathetic spirit. Every 3 weeks, Celeste would settle into Evelyn's chair, watching her mother's nimble fingers weave magic, a silent ritual that bound them closer. This one, Celeste would often say, tracing the outline of a faded photograph of her and Evelyn, their smiles wide, their eyes mirroring the same spark. It just sums us up, our bond. Evelyn was a whirlwind of activity, a woman who embraced life with both hands. Horses were her solace, the rhythmic thud of hooves against earth a balm to her. Adventurous spirit, she loved the outdoors, the whisper of the wind through the oak leaves, the scent of pine. These were passions she shared with Celeste: the art of styling hair, the thrill of horseback riding, and a steadfast belief in their shared faith. She raised me to be good. Celeste often reflected the words of quiet prayer: to have strong morals, to always see the best in people, and a trust in the promise of a better world. Serenity Estate had originally been Arthur and Evelyn's grand project, a labor of love for their retirement. But eventually, they decided its expansive charm would be better shared, transforming it into a luxurious vacation rental. Arthur, a gifted contractor, had poured his heart into its renovation, creating a haven of comfort and rustic elegance. The main house, a two-story marvel with gingerbread trim and bay windows, often hosted large gatherings, while the smaller guest cottage offered a more intimate escape. It was at this cottage that Evelyn herself chose to stay, preferring the solitude and the gentle rustle of the willow tree outside her window. Tragedy was no stranger to the Thorne family. Between Celeste and her younger brother, Damon, there had been a baby. Michael lost to a rare intestinal blockage at just 10 days old. Later, Amy, Evelyn's youngest daughter, succumbed to cystic fibrosis just before her 18th birthday. Each loss had etched lines of sorrow on Evelyn's heart, but her faith had remained her anchor, a beacon in the storm. She clung to the hope of a reunion, a future where her loved ones would walk beside her in a restored paradise. Then came the unexpected passing of Arthur, a sudden heart attack felling him as he reached for the car door. The loss had been devastating, leaving a gaping void in Evelyn's life, but she had persevered, drawing strength from her faith and her deep connections within the community. Life, however, was about to take another cruel turn, a turn that would cast a long, dark shadow over the golden embrace of Obsidian Valley. Chapter 2. The Unraveling Weekend. Friday, May 4th, dawned crisp and bright over Obsidian Valley, promising a glorious weekend. A grand wedding party drawn by the allure of crimson vineyards and the charm of Serenity Estate checked into the main house. The bride, a radiant young woman named Eliza, had discovered the property online. Captivated by its picturesque beauty, she was staying in the guest house, adjacent to Evelyn's cottage, surrounded by her bridesmaids and close friends. Evelyn, ever the gracious hostess, had greeted Eliza with a warm hug, her smile genuine and welcoming. "I'm just nearby," she'd assured the bride, gesturing towards her own secluded cottage. "If you need anything at all." The sounds of joyful preparations, laughter, and music drifted across the estate, a symphony of anticipation for the celebration to come. But Saturday, May 5th, shattered the idyll. Celeste's phone rang, a jolt of anxiety piercing the morning calm. It was a friend from their congregation. Evelyn didn't show up for Bible study. The voice on the other end said, laced with concern, "It's just not like her, Celeste." A cold dread coiled in Celeste's stomach. Her mother was unfailingly punctual, her faith a bedrock. She immediately called Evelyn's neighbor, Mrs. Gable, who lived a stone's throw from the estate. Minutes later, Mrs. Gable's voice, raspy with alarm, tore through the phone. "Celeste, you better get over here. The door's wide open, the TV's blaring, and something's wrong." Celeste's heart hammered against her ribs as she sped towards Whisperwind Lane. The scene at her mother's cottage was eerily silent, despite the blare of a television from within. The front door stood ajar, a silent invitation to a void. Stepping inside, Celeste's breath hitched. Everything was in its place just as Evelyn would have left it, her purse on the small bench, keys beside it, iPad charging. But Evelyn was gone. A dark, ominous stain marred the carpet near the bed. The bed itself was stripped, the sheets and bedding missing. As Celeste's gaze swept the walls, her eyes snagged on something horrifying, faint, rusty. Splatters against the beige paint. Her hand trembled as she snatched her phone. 911. Address of your emergency? Yes, I have a missing person. My mother. Evelyn Thorne, she's not here. And there's blood. The dispatcher's calm voice was a distant echo. Did you see anything else? Strange. Yes, Celeste choked out. There seems to be blood all over her pillow. And there's so many guests. A wedding party, staying in the main house. The words tumbled out, a frantic mix of information and raw terror. Panic became a living thing, clawing at Celeste's throat. Her mother-in-law, who had also arrived, relayed the chilling news to Eliza, the bride. Have you seen my mom? Our mom. The voice had pleaded, infused with a desperate fear, something about blood. Eliza, amidst the joyful chaos of her wedding day preparations, felt a sudden chill. No one's seen her, she'd murmured, her mind reeling. The festive atmosphere of Serenity Estate curdled into a palpable dread. Celeste, shaky and frantic, began a desperate search, her calls echoing, unanswered through the quiet estate. Meanwhile, police sirens sliced through the air, signaling the arrival of uniformed officers. The beautiful Serenity Estate was no longer just a wedding venue. It was transforming into a crime scene. Down the winding road, almost 6 miles away, fate, in the form of an eagle-eyed officer, was about to make a grim discovery that would shatter any lingering hope. Chapter 3. The First Threads of Evidence. Detective Leo Maxwell was enjoying a rare quiet Saturday morning with his 3 loyal hounds and a pair of chatty parakeets when his sergeant's call came in. Suspicious missing persons case, Whisperwind Lane, Serenity Estate. You. Available, Maxwell. Maxwell, a reserve detective with the Obsidian Valley Sheriff's Office, felt a familiar pull in his gut. On my way. The drive to Whisperwind Lane was usually a scenic one, but today the beauty felt oppressive, a stark contrast to the grim reality awaiting him. He arrived to find the property already swarming with deputies. Sergeant Elena Rodriguez, a veteran detective with a no-nonsense demeanor, met him at the main gate. This is bad, Leo, Elena said, her voice grave. Really bad. Maxwell took in the grand Victorian manor, a beacon of white against the green hills. He made his way to Evelyn's cottage, the scene of the initial discovery. The door, just as Celeste had described, was wide open, no signs of forced entry. Inside, the air was still, heavy with an unspoken horror. His gaze immediately fell upon 2 distinct, dark red splotches on the carpet. Bloodstains. Then, the beige pillow, discarded on a nearby bench, stained crimson. And on the cabinet, a macabre spatter, mirroring the streaks on Evelyn's headboard in the back wall. Her purse, keys, phone, and iPad lay undisturbed on the bench. Her 2 vehicles still parked outside. She was taken, Maxwell stated, the words a cold certainty. Against her will. This is a crime scene. Even as Maxwell and Elena began the painstaking process of securing Evelyn's cottage, a call came in, cutting through the tense quiet. It was an officer from the State Highway Patrol, 6 miles away on Dragon's Tooth Road, a remote, winding stretch of asphalt. They had found something disturbing, discarded bedding and clothing. Maxwell felt a jolt of grim anticipation. He dispatched a team to Dragon's Tooth, the hope of a breakthrough battling with the fear of what they might find. The evidence arrived at the crime lab annex, a sterile environment where tragedy was dissected. Inside the sealed bags, Maxwell found a gingham print comforter, a pillow, a woman's dress, a pair of shorts and a shirt. The bedding pattern matched Celeste's description of her mother's missing linens. Celeste was called in, her face pale, her hands trembling as she identified the items. "It's her stuff," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I knew something really bad had happened. Maxwell's mind raced. My thought, he later recounted to his partner, Detective Julian Vance, was that Evelyn was wrapped in that bedding and transported. Whether she was already deceased or severely injured, it was clear this wasn't just a disappearance anymore. The community of Obsidian Valley was rocked. News of Evelyn Thorne's vanishing spread like wildfire, a dark stain on the valley's peaceful reputation. The thought that such a brutal act could happen in their quiet enclave sent shivers through everyone. Now, as dusk settled over Serenity Estate, the wedding guests began to return from their celebrations at Crimson Vineyards, oblivious to the horror that had unfolded. 20 or more people, a potential pool of suspects, descended upon the scene, transforming it into a chaotic tableau. These are all potential suspects, Elena grimly observed, gesturing towards the bewildered wedding party. They all had ready access to Evelyn. Maxwell felt the immense pressure. A missing person, a blood-soaked crime scene, and 24 potential witnesses or perpetrators. This was the stuff of classic whodunits, a chilling Agatha Christie scenario playing out in their serene valley. He knew they had to be meticulous, interview every single person, no matter how remote their connection might seem. As the wedding guests were gently but firmly told they could not re-enter the main house, a chorus of confusion and frustration erupted. Children cried. Parents fretted over forgotten necessities. The bride, Eliza, was visibly distraught. I'm in complete shock, she told Maxwell, her voice cracking. Nancy was so kind, so lovely. I can't believe this. Maxwell understood their frustration, but the integrity of the crime scene was paramount. He noted the proximity of Evelyn's cottage to the guest house where Eliza had been sleeping. It was almost unbelievable that no one had heard anything. Evelyn's door was open, he pointed out, and right next door, only one wall separating them, was where the bride was sleeping. She said she didn't hear a thing. Eliza confirmed her account. My girlfriends and I did face masks, went to bed. Around 11:15, earplugs in, lights out. Detectives discovered that Evelyn was believed to have gone missing the previous evening. The wedding party had been at the rehearsal dinner until late, returning around 10:30 p.m. and go to bed by midnight. Most of their alibis checked out. However, one wedding guest, a man named Ethan, couldn't definitively account for his whereabouts. I wasn't in the wedding, Ethan had mumbled, avoiding eye contact. I pretty much just hung out at the house. So you were here the whole time? Maxwell pressed. Ethan's answers were vague, his story shifting between being alone at the estate and possibly attending the event. This immediately raised a red flag. His reluctance to cooperate the next day only amplified their suspicions. I'd love to be helpful, Ethan said, his voice now flat, but I don't have anything else. This is onerous. People who aren't involved usually bend over backwards for you, Elena noted, observing Ethan's retreating figure. His attitude is concerning. Maxwell decided a third interview was necessary, this time at Ethan's home in Northern California. He arrived unannounced, accompanied by Vance. Ethan, surprised, seemed to soften. He was cooperative, even apologetic for his previous demeanor. Did you go to the rehearsal dinner, or did you stay? Maxwell asked, cutting to the chase. No, I went to both. Ethan quickly corrected, then clarified, sorry, I went to the rehearsal dinner, not the rehearsal. His wife then produced photos on her phone, clearly showing Ethan at the dinner, his alibi solidified. He even agreed to provide a DNA sample, which later cleared him. The wedding party, as a whole, was ruled out. The search for Evelyn Thorne, however, was just beginning. Chapter 4, The Shadow of the Past. As days turned into a week, the search for Evelyn Thorne intensified. Obsidian Valley became a hive of activity, helicopters crisscrossing the sky, search dogs combing the riverbeds that snaked behind Serenity Estate. Celeste, along with a dedicated group of friends, tirelessly scoured every culvert, every ditch, every remote stretch of Dragon's Tooth Road. She's a fighter, Celeste would tell herself, clinging to a fragile thread of hope. She's alive. We'll find her. The investigation broadened. Detectives learned that Evelyn had been in the process of selling Serenity Estate, a decision driven by her desire to dedicate herself entirely to her faith. This meant a steady stream of contractors, painters, and plumbers had been on the property in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, all working to finalize the sale. Each one became a potential person of interest. Every single person who was on this property within the last couple weeks had to be located and interviewed. Maxwell declared the task daunting. Among the items left behind in Evelyn's cottage was her iPad case, surrounded by pamphlets and notes. One name, circled in red, caught Maxwell's eye: Marco Ramirez, a painter with a phone number scribbled beneath. "Hi, I'm calling because we're investigating the disappearance of Evelyn Thorne," Maxwell began when Marco answered. "Do you remember being there on that Thursday? Did you see Evelyn?" Marco was cooperative, his voice calm and friendly. "Yes, she was there. She was very kind. She even gave me a tamale. Said I was a hard worker." He denied seeing any arguments or anything unusual. He seemed genuinely helpful. Then, another name surfaced: Sean Blackwood, the general contractor Evelyn had hired. Celeste confided in Maxwell that her mother and Blackwood had had a heated dispute over his work, which had led to his dismissal. He had been insistent about payment, threatening lawsuits. Sean was very frustrated, Celeste explained. He wasn't happy about the delay in payment until escrow closed. Sean Blackwood was immediately a prime suspect. His interview was terse, confrontational. "I don't like working with Evelyn," Blackwood admitted readily. "It's been very difficult. She wasn't happy with our work. Fire me off the job." He brandished his phone, showing text messages detailing his threats of legal action if he didn't receive prompt payment. When asked for a DNA sample, Blackwood refused, stating he needed to speak with his attorney. "He's either being cautious or he's concerned," Maxwell mused too. "Elena, which is it?" Days later, however, to the detective's surprise, Blackwood voluntarily submitted his DNA, which subsequently cleared him. The DNA results also cleared the initial suspicious wedding guest, Ethan. The case, despite their tireless efforts, began to stall. "We were running out of leads," Elena admitted, her frustration mirroring the public's growing unease. The Thorne family, in particular Celeste, was in agony. They just wanted answers. Then, a critical piece of information emerged from the analysis of Evelyn's phone records. At 12:17 a.m. on Saturday, May 5th, a 911 call had been initiated from Evelyn's phone. It lasted 0 seconds. It got shut off, Maxwell realized, a chilling implication. Instantly. That gives us a precise timestamp. Midnight 17. That's when something bad happened. Approximately 12 days into the investigation, the lab delivered another bombshell. Unknown male DNA had been developed from the bloodstained pillow found in Evelyn's cottage. It was submitted to Cody's, the state database, but yielded no matches. The perpetrator had no prior record. The investigation, however, was far from over. A new, cutting-edge tool was about to be unleashed, one that Obsidian Valley Sheriff's Office had never deployed before: geofencing. Chapter 5: The Digital Net. The investigation had reached a dead end, a concrete wall blocking their path. Desperation began to creep in, but Detective Leo Maxwell, ever the innovator, had recently heard about a novel crime-fighting tool: geofencing. At that time, it was a relatively new concept, something few agencies in California had even attempted. It's a virtual fence, Maxwell explained to a skeptical but intrigued Elena. You draw it around an area, say Evelyn's cottage, for a specific period. Google then tells us which Google accounts, which cell phones entered that fence during that time. GPS coordinates? Elena asked, raising an eyebrow. Precisely, Maxwell confirmed. As long as location services are on, Google tracks it. Doesn't matter if it's an iPhone or Android. The idea was controversial, raising immediate privacy concerns. But Serenity Estate was in a rural area. The chances of innocent bystanders accidentally falling into the fence were minimal. The 911 call at 12:17 a.m. provided a crucial timestamp, a precise window of interest. After meticulously drafting search warrants and navigating legal complexities, they submitted their request to Google. The wait was agonizing each day, stretching into an eternity of unanswered questions. Then, months later, in November, Maxwell's phone rang. It was Vance's voice, laced with an unmistakable excitement. "Leo, you're not going to believe this. We got the results." He rushed back to the office, his heart pounding. The screen displayed a map of Serenity Estate, overlaid with a series of numbered dots. These were the pings, the unique device numbers associated with cell phones that had entered the geofence. "This is your first fence?" Elena asked, leaning closer. "Yes," Maxwell confirmed, pointing to a cluster of larger circles. "These are the wedding guests, 20-plus people, but only 4 phones show up pinging actively. The others were likely in silent mode, asleep. The wedding guests had already been cleared by DNA, so their presence was expected. The real focus was elsewhere." Maxwell zoomed in on Evelyn's cottage, his finger tracing its outline on the screen. "Right here," he said, his voice dropping, "that's Evelyn's studio. And we see a cell phone pinging right inside the wall of her studio." The pings were precise: 1:33 a.m. and again at 1:52 a.m., both within the critical window after the failed 911 call. "This is it," Maxwell breathed, a surge of adrenaline coursing through him. "This is a potentially huge moment. Either it's Evelyn's phone, and we're back to square one, or it belongs to someone else. And that person," Elena finished, her eyes fixed on the screen, "becomes our most likely killer." The tension was palpable. The geofence had delivered. Now they needed to write another warrant, this one for the subscriber information, to put a name to the device number, a face to the ghost in Evelyn's cottage. The wheels of justice, slow and deliberate, continue to turn. Chapter 6: The Unmasking. The wait for the subscriber information was excruciating. Weeks crawled by each day, a test of patience. Then, one crisp November morning, the call came. "We got a name," Vance announced, his voice barely containing his excitement. "The owner of that device, it's Marco Ramirez." Maxwell felt a jolt of recognition. Marco Ramirez, the painter, the mild-mannered man who had cooperated so readily, who had claimed to have seen nothing unusual, who had even shared a tamale with Evelyn. "The painter," Maxwell repeated, disbelief coloring his tone. This was a shock. Marco had been so friendly, so unassuming during his initial interview. There had been no reason to suspect him. But now, the geofence had placed his phone directly inside Evelyn's cottage at the precise moment she disappeared. We know it's his phone. We know he's there. He had opportunity, familiarity. With the property, Evelyn's habits, Elena rattled off, the pieces clicking into place with a horrifying precision. There's no reasonable explanation for a painter to be there at that time of night. The image of the quiet, hard-working painter shattered, replaced by a chilling uncertainty. They needed to dig deeper into Marco Ramirez's life. Their initial inquiries painted a picture of a normal, diligent man. He was an immigrant from Mexico, known for his excellent craftsmanship, a quiet professional. He was one of those guys you'd want on your team, a former client described. Him, neat, tidy, polite, great with clients. His social media painted an even more wholesome image, a devoted father, a loving husband. He often raved about his daughter, his pride evident in every post. There was no criminal record, either in Mexico or the United States. No history of violence. No romantic connection to Evelyn. No financial dispute. Beyond the initial, easily resolved payment. The pieces stubbornly refused to fit. Why would this seemingly ordinary man, a pillar of his family and community, suddenly commit such a heinous act? Then, the true unraveling began. Maxwell ordered a deep dive into Marco Ramirez's Google search history. What they found was jarring, a stark contrast to the persona he projected. He was doing Google searches for cougar and sexy lingerie videos and sexy cougars. Vance reported, his voice tinged with surprise. Cougar porn, Elena stated flatly. Evelyn was 15, 20 years older than him. The connection was undeniable, disturbing. It hinted at a darker, hidden side. As they delved further, they unearthed a trove of even more unsettling information, searches for escorts in various cities, leading to evidence of actual encounters. We found numerous videos. Maxwell revealed, his voice grim, shot by him, with various women. At least 10, 15 videos. Marco Ramirez, the devoted father and husband, lived a secret life, a labyrinth of illicit encounters and hidden desires. His quiet facade masked a man driven by a twisted set of compulsions. There was the daytime, very nice, courteous painter, Elena summarized her voice cold. And then there was the night, kind of weird, fetish drinking too. Much Marco Ramirez. His former employer, a contractor who had known Marco for years, confirmed the hidden life. I noticed he was drinking more, the contractor confessed regret in his eyes, and hooking up with different women. He'd even asked to borrow money for me to go to Vegas for girls of the night. I told him, hey man, you're gonna mess it up. You got a wife, a daughter. I tried to warn him. The geofence hit was compelling, but it wasn't enough for an arrest. A phone, after all, could be misplaced, borrowed, or even stolen. They needed more. Something undeniable, something biological. They needed Marco's DNA. Detectives from a special operations unit were deployed. Their mission, surveillance. They followed Marco for days, a silent shadow. They watched him go about his daily routine, observed him having lunch with his wife at a local restaurant. As he left, he discarded a half-empty soda bottle on the table. In a public place, a discarded item of DNA could be legally retrieved without a warrant. The Coke bottle was quickly collected, carefully packaged, and rushed to the DNA lab. The wait for the results was excruciating. Every hour felt like a day, every day a week. The tension in the sheriff's office was thick, a mixture of hope and trepidation. This was their Hail Mary, their last, best shot at justice for Evelyn Thorne. When the call came, it was brief, electrifying. It's a match, the lab. Technician reported, her voice calm but resonant. The DNA from the Coke bottle matches the DNA from the blood-stained pillow. Maxwell slammed his fist on the desk, a wave of relief washing over him, quickly, followed by a cold, righteous fury. They had him. Chapter 7. The Confession in the Carrizo Plain. The interrogation room was stark, clinical. Detective Leo Maxwell and Detective Julian Vance sat across from Marco Ramirez, the air thick with unspoken truths. Marco, initially, maintained his composure, the same mild-mannered painter they had first encountered. What exactly were you guys painting? Maxwell began, feigning casual interest, allowing Marco to recount his work on the decks of the main house. Marco readily described using the bathrooms in both the main house and the smaller guest house, establishing his familiarity with the property. Did you know where Evelyn stayed? Maxwell asked, his voice even. To be honest, I didn't even know she was staying in that area, Marco replied. Smoothly, his eyes meeting Maxwell's. He spoke of Evelyn's kindness, the tamale, the scripture they had read together. He claimed ignorance of her disappearance, only hearing rumors from his boss. Are you in any way involved with Evelyn missing? Vance interjected, his voice sharper. Oh no, no, Marco responded, a hint of surprise in his tone. Any reason why? Anyone would say that? Well, because there's no reason. The detectives then ratcheted up the pressure, their voices firm, unyielding. We've done a very thorough investigation. Marco, Maxwell stated, his gaze unwavering. Thousands of hours. We waited for all the evidence. We know you. Came back. We know a lot of stuff. Marco's body language shifted. The composed painter began to crumble, his shoulders slumping, his gaze dropping to the table. The facade was cracking. Oh my God, Marco whispered, his voice trembling. I want to be honest with you guys. I know that I made a mistake. I made a mistake. A wave of expectation surged through Maxwell and Vance. This was it, the truth. But what Marco said next was utterly bizarre. He claimed he had returned to Serenity Estate in the dead of night to retrieve a ladder he had forgotten, needed for a job the next day. As he was backing up his truck, he said Evelyn had somehow walked up behind him, unseen in the darkness. I hit her with your car, your truck? Maxwell asked, disbelief mingling with calculation. Marco mumbled. Then I took her back in the place. That's when she collapsed. It was an accident. I took her inside to help her. He recounted a desperate, drunken attempt to help her, claiming she had then collapsed. But the story felt hollow, riddled with inconsistencies. Maxwell knew better. He knew about the Google searches, the other life Marco led. How did you have sex with her? Maxwell asked, his voice cutting through the manufactured narrative. Tell me how that transpired. Marco's eyes widened, a flicker of panic. I was drunk. He denied. Evelyn had invited him, claiming he simply showed up for the ladder. This was the first time Maxwell's jaw truly hit the floor. The accident narrative was dissolving into something far more sinister. If the sex was not consensual, if it was rape and she was dead, this was a special circumstance murder case, carrying a life sentence. But the most crucial question remained unanswered. Where was Evelyn's body? Maxwell brought in an iPad, pulling up a detailed map of Obsidian Valley and the surrounding terrain. Can we try and see if we can find where you took her? He asked, hoping Marco would point out the location. Instead, Marco looked up, his eyes bloodshot, a strange mix of despair and resolve. Would you guys don't mind? I would like to take you. I would like to take you. This was an unprecedented moment. Maxwell and Vance exchanged a quick glance. A confession and a direct offer to lead them to the body. This was their chance. They placed Marco in a patrol car, and he directed them due east from the Templeton Substation. Maxwell and Vance followed in their unmarked vehicle, Elena and other deputies trailing behind. The journey was long, stretching for an hour from the familiar vineyards of Paso Robles to the desolate, arid expanse of the Carrizo Plain bordering Kern County. The landscape shifted dramatically, from arable land to a harsh, scrubby desert, a vast, unforgiving wilderness. I'm thinking, wow, that's going to be a tough find, Maxwell confessed, observing the rugged terrain. Animals dig things up out here. We don't expect a lot. Marco's demeanor during the drive was subdued, quiet, punctuated by occasional murmurs of regret. I know that you guys are just doing your job, he said, his voice barely audible. I wish that I could be forward like a long time ago, because this time it has been killing me. The longer they drove, the more frustrating the search became. Marco stopped at 4 or 5 different locations, each one seeming identical to the last. The Carrizo Plain stretched endlessly, a sea of brown grasses and stunted shrubs. Doubt began to creep in. Had he truly forgotten? Or was he playing games? How far off the road was she? Maxwell pressed, trying to jog his memory. You. Think it might be in here. Celeste, who had been informed of the new development and had joined the grim procession, shivered despite the afternoon sun. She wore no jacket, and the cold, vast emptiness of the plain mirrored the emptiness in her heart. I remember looking at them, just walking in circles, she later recalled. Thinking, is Evelyn going to be here? Marco stumbled through the tall grasses, his memory hazy, his directions becoming increasingly vague. The anxiety among the officers was palpable. Then, at one particular spot, nestled deep in the vastness, Maxwell's eyes caught something out of place. 6 or 8 inches of rocks, stacked in a crude circle, stood starkly against the natural disarray. He turned to Marco, his voice low. Are those the rocks you're describing? Marco's head snapped up. His eyes widened, a sudden clarity replacing the haze of confusion. Oh my God, yes, he choked out. He fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face, the weight of his actions finally crushing him. Maxwell approached the crude marker. What he saw was heartbreaking. A partial leg bone, about 18 inches in length, lay amidst smaller bones, vertebrae, ribs, and then the unmistakable sight of a human skull, partially buried, exposed to the elements. Evelyn Thorne, reduced to scattered remains in the desolate Carrizo Plain. Animal activity had scattered her body for perhaps a mile of final indignity. It always bothered me, Elena would later say, that he didn't even have the courtesy to bury her. Maxwell felt a surge of cold fury. This was treacherous wilderness, a place to simply discard a life. He looked back at Marco, now a broken man on his knees, sobbing. Can you do me a big favor? Marco pleaded through his tears. It depends on what it is, Carlos. I wish that you could talk to my little one and tell her that, and I feel so sorry about this huge mistake I made. Yeah, Maxwell replied, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. I can do that. He knew Marco wouldn't be going home again. Chapter 8. The Full Confession. Back at the sheriff's North Station in Templeton in the same interrogation room, Marco Ramirez was once again confronted. Now, with Evelyn's body located, the detectives knew they held all the cards. The time for lies was over. They began by showing Marco a detailed animated map, charting his movements on the night Evelyn disappeared. Using the geofencing data, they traced his path from his home to a commercial building, then a church parking lot. Wait, Maxwell pointed out. Carlo goes to church on the night Evelyn disappeared. Yes, Vance confirmed. Church wasn't in session, of course, but he pulls into the parking lot, sits there for 20, 30 minutes. Chilling evidence, as he's probably pondering whether he's going to Evelyn's or not. The map continued to trace his journey, showing his phone pinging along. Highway 46, drawing ever closer to Serenity Estate. The last location data from Google was at 12:14 a.m. 3 minutes later, Evelyn's attempted 911 call. He finally admitted it. Maxwell recounted to Elena. He came into Evelyn's house around 12:15 in the morning. She saw him come in. Marco's new story was chillingly different from his previous clumsy lies. He admitted he went there with the intention of having sex with her. He claimed he believed Evelyn had been flirting with him, misinterpreting her kindness. The shared tamales as an invitation. Then, the brutal truth. He admitted to hitting her to wake her up, confirming the blood spatter on the dresser and walls. He admitted to raping her. So you intended to kill her so that you didn't get caught for the rape, right? Vance pressed, his voice hard. Marco, finally stripped of all his defenses, nodded. He admitted to suffocating Evelyn with a pillow. After you finished having sex with her, how long did it take you to put the pillow over her face? Maxwell demanded, needing the specifics, the cold, hard facts. 45 minutes, Marco mumbled, his face devoid of expression, a chilling testament to his deliberation. She couldn't stop her. It was so quick. He described wrapping Evelyn's body in her own bedding, the very items found scattered on the side of Dragon's Tooth Road, blown out of his pickup truck as he drove out to the desolate Carrizo Plain. The only detail he stubbornly refused to admit was hanging up the 911 call. I don't remember, he insisted, even as the detectives knew the truth. How long were you in her house for? 40 minutes, Marco replied. After I had sex with her, I went to put it back on the truck on the tailgate, and I just drove away. Is this the entire truth? Maxwell asked one last time. Yes, Marco said, looking up, his eyes now vacant. I'm not even lying anymore. I'm just being honest with you guys. Now I have to pay the consequences. He appeared to feel a strange, cathartic peace, a sorrow for what he had done, but also a relief in finally unburdening himself. Maxwell asked if he would be willing to write an apology letter to Evelyn's children and grandchildren, and to his own family. Marco agreed, scribbling out a letter that offered little solace but acknowledged his immense, foolish mistake. As soon as the letter was written, Marco Ramirez was placed under arrest for the murder of Evelyn Thorne. It was a huge relief, Maxwell later confided, emotion evident in his eyes. Justice was finally going to be served for Evelyn Thorne. Celeste received the news with a strange mix of relief and renewed devastation. Who? She had asked, bewildered, when Maxwell revealed Marco Ramirez's name. How could it possibly be the painter? The discovery of her mother's body, even in such a desolate place, brought a fragile sense of closure. It's the worst-case scenario, Celeste admitted, tears streaming down her face, but knowing that we found her, and she's not suffering anymore, that was a comfort. She thought of her mother, of Evelyn's vibrant spirit, her unwavering faith, her plans to retire and preach full-time. She just got so cheated, Celeste wept. How very, very unfair. Chapter 9. The Slow Plea and a Daughter's Legacy. The legal battle that followed Marco Ramirez's confession was arduous, but the prosecution was confident. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Marco pleaded not guilty. His defense attorney, however, had a clever strategy, a motion to suppress the recorded interview. Marco spoke excellent English with his wife in recorded jail calls, the prosecutor argued, but he was a native Spanish speaker. The defense claimed his Miranda warnings should have been given in Spanish, or an interpreter should have been present. Maxwell had been meticulous during the interview, ensuring Marco understood his rights. "Do you understand what I'm saying?" he had asked clearly. "If there's at any point you don't, please ask." The judge ultimately denied the motion to suppress, ruling that Marco's rights had been properly preserved and that he understood the proceedings. The confession, the DNA match, the geofencing data, the discovery of the body, the mountain of evidence remained unshaken. The trial was set for January 2022, but on the first day a surprising development unfolded. Marco's attorney approached the prosecution. "He wants to just plead to life without parole," the attorney stated. "He doesn't want to put his family through the publicity of a trial." Typically, a plea deal involved waiving the right to appeal. But Marco wanted to preserve his right. The judge proposed a unique solution, a slow plea. The prosecutor would still present all the evidence, but the judge, rather than a jury, would then render a verdict. Maxwell presented the recorded interviews, the jail calls, the DNA evidence, the geofencing data, the detailed maps of Marco's movements. Every piece of the puzzle, meticulously gathered over months of tireless investigation, was laid bare before the court. The judge, after reviewing the overwhelming evidence, found Marco Ramirez guilty of first-degree murder, with the special circumstance that the murder was committed during a rape and burglary. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He was given an appropriate sentence. Elena observed a somber satisfaction in her voice. Justice was served in that way, although the family will truly never have closure. Celeste, however, found a fragile peace in the verdict. The trial, though agonizing, brought a measure of finality. She delivered a powerful victim impact statement, her voice strong despite the pain. "He took her life for nothing," Celeste told the court, addressing Marco directly, her eyes filled with sorrow and righteous anger. "Just to let him know that it sickened us, and what was the point? Because now he's going to live behind bars for the rest of his life for one foolish night." The community of Obsidian Valley remembered Evelyn Thorne as a strong woman. With the biggest heart, she had survived so much heartache, and each tragedy, Celeste believed, had only made her stronger, made her heart more beautiful. Evelyn's memorial was held at a vineyard overlooking the rolling hills of Obsidian Valley, a place she had loved so dearly. Hundreds of people gathered, a testament to the profound impact she had made on so many lives. Photographs of Evelyn adorned the hall, laughing with her grandkids, riding her beloved horse. Montana, her face alight with joy in the barn. "They really show who she was," Celeste said, looking at the cherished images. She loved God. She wanted that to be first in her life, and she wanted people to know that, and her hope that she had to see her kids again. Today, Celeste rides Montana, her mother's horse, with her own daughter, Fire. The tradition lives on, a beautiful, enduring legacy. "Well, I once did with my mom. Now I do with my daughter," Celeste says, a small smile gracing her lips. And that's a good feeling. Detective Leo Maxwell, deeply affected by the case, maintains a connection with Celeste, reaching out every May 5th, the anniversary of Evelyn's death. The shadow of Whisperwind Lane, of Serenity Estate, and the brutal crime that occurred there lingered, but so too did the memory of Evelyn Thorne, a woman of faith, resilience, and unwavering kindness, a beacon whose light could never truly be extinguished. Marco Ramirez appealed his conviction in July 2023. It was denied by the California Court of Appeals. He remains imprisoned, his secret life exposed, his senseless act forever staining the golden embrace of Obsidian Valley. The morning mist still clung to the gnarled oak trees of Whispering Willows, a town so quaint it practically hummed with pastoral charm. Nestled halfway between the bustling metropolises of San Francisco and Los Angeles, it was renowned for its rolling vineyards, equestrian trails, and the sort of serene quiet that made one question the very existence of rush hour. This wasn't just any quiet, though. It was the kind of quiet that, when broken, reverberated like a gong through the very soul of the community. Our story, unfortunately, begins with a clang. 62-year-old Agnes Wattleworth, proprietor of the Perm Palace, Whispering Willow's most popular hair salon, and owner of the sprawling property known as Eden Enclave, was missing, and not just popped out for a croissant. Missing, but door wide open, TV blaring, and a rather disturbing crimson stain on the carpet, missing. It's hard to talk about that day. Aurora, Agnes's daughter, would later recount, her voice still laced with a peculiar blend of grief and bewildered amusement at the sheer audacity of the universe. Because when I look back, I just think about the tragedy and the absurdity, the sheer, unadulterated absurdity of it all. Aurora had received the first ominous call from Agnes's neighbor, a woman named Helga, whose penchant for dramatic pronouncements was legendary in Whispering Willows. "Aurora, darling," Helga had shrieked into the phone, her voice crackling like static on a bad radio line. The doors wide open, the tellies practically begging for an audience, and you better get over here. Something's very, very wrong. Upon arrival at her mother's charming, if somewhat ramshackle, studio apartment on the Eden Enclave property, Aurora's blood ran colder than a winter morning in the Napa Valley. Everything was there: Agnes's purse, her keys, her iPad, her ever-present dog-eared copy of the Watchtower. But Agnes herself was not. The glaring television, still blaring a show about competitive cheese rolling, seemed to mock the eerie stillness. And then there was the stain, a patch on the carpet, ominously dark, near where the bed should have been. The bed, however, was bare. Sheets, pillows, everything gone. Aurora, a woman whose pragmatic nature usually kept her grounded, felt a tremor of pure panic. She looked closer, and her gaze snagged on the wall beside the missing bed, a scattering of tiny, dark droplets. Splatter. "That's when I grabbed the phone," she told the assembled crew of reporters years later, and called the emergency services. 911. Address of your emergency? Eden Enclave. Missing person. My mother-in-law has not been heard of or seen all day. Did you see anything else strange when you went in the house? Yes. There seems to be blood all over where her pillow should have been, adding a layer of truly bizarre comedic irony to the unfolding tragedy. The sprawling main house of Eden Enclave was, at that very moment, playing host to over 20 wedding guests, a veritable circus of satin and prosecco, celebrating the impending nuptials of a bride who, in a truly unfortunate stroke of luck, had chosen Agnes's property for her rustic chic vineyard wedding. The house, Aurora sighed, gesturing vaguely towards the elegant Victorian structure, now festooned with police tape, turned into a crime scene. Taped off. Police, helicopters, dogs. My friends, bless their cotton socks, were all wondering how they were getting back to their glamping experience. Suddenly, everyone was a potential suspect. I mean, it was like an Agatha Christie novel, but with more Chardonnay and passive-aggressive bridesmaids. The first law enforcement officer to arrive on the scene was not, as one might expect, a fresh-faced rookie. Instead, it was Inspector Barnaby Boomerang Bates, a man whose career had seen more twists and turns than a vintage corkscrew, a reserve detective with the Whispering Willows County Sheriff's Office, Barnaby was a walking anachronism. Tweed jacket, even in May, a monocle. Perched precariously on his nose for dramatic effect, and a penchant for quoting obscure poets at inappropriate moments. He lived in a charmingly chaotic cottage. With his girlfriend, 3 dogs named after obscure cheeses, and 2 parakeets, who frequently offered unsolicited and usually incorrect advice. Ah, the scent of impending malfeasance, Barnaby declared, stepping out of his battered, yet immaculately polished, vintage sedan. A Friday, was it? May the 4th be with us, indeed. He met with the first responding deputy, a perpetually exasperated woman named Sergeant Penelope Penny Pinter, whose patience for Barnaby's theatrics was thinner than Agnes Waddleworth's perm foils. Inspector Bates, Penny greeted him, a muscle twitching in her jaw. It's not good. Degnan already said it. This is beyond not good. This is what in the blazes happened here not good. Barnaby adjusted his monocle, surveying the scene. The elegant white main house, the smaller cottage, the general air of bucolic serenity utterly ruined by the flashing blue lights. He approached Agnes's studio, the door still ajar. No signs of forced entry, he mused, stepping inside. The first thing he noticed were 2 large, undeniable crimson splotches on the floor. Elementary. My dear Penny, he declared, though Penny rolled her eyes. Bloodstains, and rather robust ones at that. On a nearby bench sat Agnes's purse, her car keys, her cell phone, her iPad. Her 2 vehicles sat innocently in the driveway. A beige pillow, now a prop in this macabre play, lay on the floor, also stained, and that splatter on the cabinet. The headboard, the back wall. What are all these signals telling you, Inspector? Penny asked already, knowing the answer but indulging him. Barnaby swept a dramatic hand through the air. They scream, Penny, they positively shriek of abduction, of a struggle, of forceful removal. This, my dear Sergeant, is unequivocally a crime scene. Just as Barnaby was mentally composing a haiku about the fragility of life and the unexpectedness of violence, a phone call came in. An eagle-eyed officer with the Whispering Willows Highway Patrol, patrolling a lonely stretch of road called La Vista Lane, had stumbled upon a peculiar find, a bundle of bedding, a woman's dress, a pair of shorts, and a shirt, 6 or 7 miles from Eden. Enclave. Eureka! Barnaby bellowed, causing a nearby search dog to yelp. The plot thickens like a forgotten pot of artisanal jam. The items were secured and brought to the dimly lit annex of the crime lab. When they were unfurled, the stains on the bedding were unmistakably blood, and the gingham-type print, a perfect match for the remaining unstolen bedding still found at Agnes's cottage. My thought, Barnaby announced to a small, bewildered group of forensic techs, is that poor Agnes was, shall we say, packaged for transport. Whether deceased or severely injured at that juncture, the narrative remains consistent. She was taken. Aurora, summoned to identify the items, recognized them immediately. Her mother's familiar quilt, her favorite floral dress. That's when I knew. Aurora confessed, tears welling in her eyes, that something really, truly terrible had happened, and it wasn't going to be good. We needed to find her, and we needed to find her now. The clock ticked towards Saturday evening, and the situation at Eden Enclave escalated from disturbing to utterly chaotic, the wedding guests having concluded their rehearsal dinner at the local Vine and Swine Winery, a place famed for its robust reds and even more robust gossip, began returning to the property. 20-plus souls, all eager for their beauty sleep before the big day, suddenly found themselves confronted by police tape and stern-faced Officers, these are all potential suspects, Penny muttered to Barnaby, surveying the bewildered crowd. 24 people who had ready access to the property. It's overwhelming, Inspector. Indeed, Barnaby stroked his chin. A veritable buffet of potential culprits. A domestic dispute disguised as a wedding party? Or perhaps a disgruntled caterer? The newlyweds-to-be, a couple named Tiffany and Chad, who wished to remain nameless, understandably, were beside themselves. Tiffany, the bride, was practically vibrating with shock and indignation. I was in complete shock and horrified, she exclaimed to Barnaby, dabbing her eyes with a silk handkerchief. Agnes was so kind, so lovely, and now this. Barnaby, however, was not easily swayed by tears, especially when they came from a woman whose primary concern seemed to be the disruption to her wedding schedule. It's extremely frustrating, he confided to Penny, that this house is so close to Agnes's residence. One would think someone would hear a car, a scream, a particularly loud hiccup. But no, 24 people, and not a peep. Tiffany, the bride, swore she'd heard nothing. She had retired to the guest house, done face masks with her bridesmaids, and popped in her earplugs by 11:15 p.m. The rehearsal dinner, everyone confirmed, had lasted until around 10:30 p.m., with most guests heading to bed by midnight. Most, Barnaby emphasized, looking at his notes. But not all. We have one curious anomaly. A gentleman who was not officially part of the wedding party, a distant cousin of the groom, a chap by the name of Barry Bumbershoot. He claimed he just hung out at the house the whole time. Barry Bumbershoot was, by his own admission, a rather introverted individual. He hadn't been in the wedding, so he'd simply chilled at Eden Enclave. When pressed, his account of his whereabouts that Friday evening became strangely vague, laced with mumbles about recreational staring at walls and contemplative lint watching. He wasn't clear if he was here, possibly alone with Agnes Wattleworth, Penny explained, or if he actually went to the event, and so that raised some concerns. Barnaby, ever the dramatist, confronted Barry Bumbershoot again. "My dear Mr. Bumbershoot," he began, adopting his most piercing gaze, "I really feel like you can assist us. You see, I have this inkling that you may have observed something pertinent." Barry, a man whose face was a testament to the power of extreme discomfort, hunched his shoulders. "I would love to be helpful, Inspector, but I don't have anything else. This is onerous at this point." "Onerous?" Barnaby repeated, a theatrical eyebrow arching. "Mr. Bumbershoot, usually individuals not involved bend over backward for the authorities. Your reluctance, while entirely within your rights, I might add, raises a rather crimson flag in my internal meteorological station." Barry, now practically a puddle of anxiety, insisted, "I haven't seen anything." Barnaby decided a trip to Barry's Northern California residence was in order. This time, they came prepared. "We knew we had to get this interview done," Penny explained, "with or without his permission, and acquire some DNA." Naturally. To their surprise, Barry Bumbershoot, upon seeing two detectives on his doorstep, transformed from a defensive badger into a surprisingly contrite puppy. "Oh, Inspector," he stammered, ushering them in, "I do apologize for my earlier recalcitrance. That wasn't me, really. Just a touch of post-wedding malaise." His wife, a surprisingly cheerful woman named Brenda, promptly produced a phone full of photos from the rehearsal dinner, clearly showing Barry, albeit looking supremely uncomfortable, clinking glasses with a happy couple. The mystery of Barry Bumbershoot's alibi evaporated faster than a glass of cheap rose on a summer's day. He even submitted a DNA sample, sighing with relief as he did so. A false trail, Barnaby declared, dramatically wiping his brow. A red herring, if you will, marinated in social awkwardness. While the wedding guests suspect pool was drained, the search for Agnes intensified. The community of Whispering Willows, known for its quiet, was now buzzing with a nervous energy. Deputies fanned out, questioning residents. Sifting through security footage, the winding riverbed behind Eden Enclave, usually a tranquil spot for bird watching, was scoured by search and rescue. Teams, helicopters crisscrossed the sky, their rotors a constant thrumming. Reminder of the ongoing crisis. Aurora, meanwhile, organized her own search parties. Agnes was tough, she'd tell her friends, her voice unwavering. She was a fighter. She's alive. I know. Then, a new lead emerged, one that stretched beyond the confines of the wedding party. Agnes, it turned out, had decided to sell Eden Enclave. It was too much work for her, Aurora explained. She wanted to preach full-time, share her hope about paradise on earth with more people. This meant that in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, Eden Enclave had been a hive of activity. Contractors, painters, plumbers, a veritable parade of tradespeople, all performing various repairs to finalize the sale. Every single person who was on that property, Barnaby decreed, within the last 2 weeks, must be located and interviewed. No stone left unturned, no brushstroke unexamined. Among Agnes's belongings, detectives found her iPad case surrounded by pamphlets, notes, and numbers. One stood out, a painter named Miguel the Brush Ramirez, and his phone number. Barnaby, dialing the number, adopted his most reassuring tone. Mr. Ramirez, Inspector Bates here, of the Whispering Willows Sheriff's Office. We're investigating the disappearance of Agnes Wattleworth. Do you recall being at Eden Enclave last Thursday? Miguel was exceedingly cooperative, almost effusive. He remembered Agnes. Oh, she was there. Very kind woman. She even gave me a tamale. Said I was a hard worker. Such a sweet lady. He swore he hadn't noticed any arguments or disagreements. Then, Aurora provided another name. Stanley Sludge, a general contractor. Stanley and Agnes, it seemed, had a rather heated and contentious dispute over some work. Stanley was very frustrated, Aurora confirmed. He eventually got fired, and he wanted his money. Stanley Sludge, a man whose demeanor was as abrasive as his last name suggested, was promptly called in for an interview. Honestly, he grumbled, folding his arms across his chest. I didn't like working with Agnes. Very difficult. She wasn't happy with our work, fired me right off the job. Last time I spoke to her, it was a rather emphatic text exchange. He brandished his phone. I told her, and I quote, if I don't get payment quickly, I'm going to begin lawsuits against you and everybody involved. When Barnaby asked for a buccal swab for DNA, Stanley's jaw tightened. I hear what you're saying, Inspector, but I'm going to say, let me talk to my attorney. Ah, Barnaby sighed, the classic lawyer's embrace. One wonders, does the embrace signify caution or concern? Agnes Wattleworth, a woman of deep faith and unshakable hope, had navigated more than her share of life's cruelties. Born in the bustling San Fernando Valley, she had by 18 already secured her cosmetology license, becoming a master of fashionable hairstyles. She'd worked in an exclusive salon in Woodland Hills, brushing elbows with the wives of famous musicians, Neil Diamond's wife, Kenny Rogers' wife, a particular anecdote about a certain famous rock star who demanded his mullet be architectural. By 21, she owned her own home, a Hattapa Corvette, as she fondly called it. She married Robert, a quintessential Southern California surfer, and together, they moved to Whispering Willows in 1991 with their 3 children, Aurora, Amy, and Caleb. But tragedy, like an uninvited guest, often visited the Wattleworth family. There was Christopher Michael, who died at 10 days old from an intestinal blockage. Then Amy, who succumbed to cystic fibrosis shortly before her 18th birthday. And finally, Robert, Agnes's beloved husband, who suffered a sudden heart attack, collapsing as he was getting into Aurora's car. She coped, Aurora reflected, because she had an incredibly strong faith in the big guy upstairs, a real hope that she'd see her loved ones again in paradise. It was her bedrock. Now, Agnes herself had vanished. Aurora, and indeed the entire community, clung to that same hope, even as desperation gnawed at their edges. About a week into the investigation, a critical piece of the timeline puzzle fell into place. Agnes's phone bill showed an attempted 911 call at 12:17 a.m. 0 seconds. It didn't go through. It was cut off, abruptly. Midnight 17, Barnaby announced to his team, tapping his monocle. A precise temporal stamp. The moment of impact, so to speak. Agnes, attempting to summon aid, was silenced. Brutally. 12 days later, the crime lab delivered a bombshell. Unknown male DNA had been developed from the pillow submitted from Agnes's bed. It was submitted to the state database, Cody's, but yielded no matches. The perp was apparently a clean slate, criminally speaking. Meanwhile, Stanley Sludge, perhaps realizing the futility of his legal posturing, voluntarily submitted his DNA. He, along with Barry Bumbershoot, were cleared. The case, much like Barnaby's monocle on a humid day, fogged over. We hit a wall, Penny admitted. No leads. The public was unhappy. We were unhappy. We needed a Hail Mary. Barnaby, ever the innovator trapped in an old-school detective's body, had recently heard about a novel type of evidence, geofencing, a virtual fence placed around an area that allowed Google to track which Google accounts, emails, or cell phones entered its digital perimeter. You mean, Penny asked skeptically, we can effectively ask the vast, all-knowing digital ether, who was here and when? Precisely, Penny. Barnaby beamed, adjusting his tweed jacket. A digital dragnet, a technological lasso. And since Agnes's Eden Enclave is in a wonderfully rural area, the chances of extraneous pings are delightfully slim. Search warrants were written, served upon Google for the precise time frame of 12 a.m. to 1 a.m. on the night Agnes disappeared. The results arrived, an intricate digital tapestry of dots and lines. And what do you see? Barnaby asked, leaning in close to the monitor, his monocle practically fogging the screen. The screen displayed a detailed map of Eden Enclave, overlaid with a series of number dots. These, Penny explained, were the unique device numbers assigned by Google to each cell phone. The larger circles here, Penny pointed, are associated with the wedding guests. Most of their phones were in silent mode, sleeping, so we only see 4 active pings, all of them cleared, of course. But then, Barnaby's finger hovered over a single, anomalous dot. And this, he whispered, his voice thick with anticipation. What is this lone digital signal, Penny? The dot was inside Agnes's studio. It pinged at 1:33 a.m., and then again at 1:52 a.m. Inspector, Penny said, her voice hushed. That is exactly when we believe Agnes disappeared. A phone inside her studio. After midnight. It either belongs to Agnes, which would be a colossal dead end, or it belongs to someone else. Someone who is now our most likely killer. Barnaby adjusted his monocle, a wide, triumphant grin spreading across his face. I can tell you from my perspective, Penny, I am utterly exhilarated. We have something. We have a thread, a string, a shimmering digital umbilical cord, leading us directly to our villain. For months, the mystery of Agnes Wattleworth had hung over Whispering Willows, like a perpetual fog. Now, thanks to the esoteric wonders of geofencing, Barnaby and Penny finally had their first solid lead, the cell phone, inside Agnes's cottage. We have to figure out who it belongs to, Barnaby declared, practically vibrating with excitement. A new set of warrants for the subscriber. Information. The waiting, Penny, the waiting is quite agonizing. Weeks stretched into months. Then, in November, Barnaby was in the courthouse. When his phone rang, it was Penny. Her voice was breathless. "Inspector, you are not going to believe this. We have a name. The owner of that device. It is Miguel Ramirez." Barnaby's monocle nearly popped out. Miguel the Brush Ramirez? The cooperative painter? The tamale recipient? The hard worker? The very same. Penny confirmed. "This is quite the shock, Inspector. We'd already interviewed him, remember? Mild-mannered. No reason to suspect him then. But now, there's a reason. We know it's his phone. We know he was there. He was familiar with the property, Agnes's habits. All those things that add up to opportunity." There was, Barnaby mused, not a reasonable explanation why anyone would be doing painting at 1:33 a.m. It's looking, Penny, like our mild-mannered muralist is, at the very least, someone who needs to be engaged in another spirited discussion. The detectives began a thorough background check on Miguel Ramirez. They spoke to his clients, his friends. Everyone described him as a thoroughly normal, decent guy, a model citizen. He was one of those guys you want on your team. One client gushed, "Worked for me for 20 years. Great at communicating, very neat, tidy painter, professional, great with clients, polite, courteous, just loved being a dad, raved about his daughter." Miguel, a father, a husband, by all accounts leading a normal, unremarkable life. No criminal record, neither in Mexico nor the United States. No romantic relationship with Agnes. No dispute over funds. Nothing. Absolutely nothing, too. Explain why his phone was inside Agnes's studio in the dead of night at the moment she vanished. This, Penny, Barnaby pronounced, is baffling. Utterly, gloriously baffling. It defies all conventional narrative arcs. The normal guy trope, but with a decidedly sinister undertone. The bafflement, however, was soon replaced by a chilling discovery. Barnaby, with his usual theatrical flair, decided to delve deep into Miguel's Google search history. One must examine the innermost workings of the suspect's mind, he declared, peering at the screen. And what better window than their internet proclivities? What they found was unexpected. Cougar and sexy lingerie videos, Penny read aloud, her voice tinged with disbelief. Cougar lingerie, porn videos, sexy cougars. Inspector, this has a rather specific theme, wouldn't you say? A theme, Barnaby nodded gravely, that is, shall we say, rather jarringly tied to our case. Agnes Wattleworth was, indeed, older than Miguel Ramirez by a significant margin. A cougar, as the parlance goes. The rabbit hole deepened. Further searches revealed his pursuit of escorts in various cities. On his cell phone, they found numerous self-shot videos of Miguel engaging in sexual acts with different women. At least 10, 15 videos. Penny tallied, a grim look on her face. So, Barnaby mused, a dramatic sigh escaping him. Our father, our husband, our polite and courteous painter harbored secrets. Deep, subterranean secrets. Ugh. Daytime Miguel, the Brush, was a man of impeccable taste and professional decorum. The nighttime Miguel, however, was a rather different beast. Fuentes, florist of a darker hue. An old acquaintance of Miguel's, a former colleague from a past painting gig, recalled Miguel's gradual descent. He was drinking more, the man admitted, and kind of hooking up with different women, asked to borrow money for Vegas. Girls of the night, that sort of thing, told me about an older gal he was seeing. I warned him, hey man, you're gonna mess it up. You got a wife, daughter. The geofence hit was not enough for an arrest. A phone is not a person. They needed definitive proof. They needed Miguel's DNA, but they couldn't tip their hand. Barnaby's Special Operations Unit, a group usually tasked with surveilling drug dealers and gang members, was now deployed for a less glamorous target. A painter who, in a truly magnificent display of dramatic irony, had absolutely no idea he was now a prime suspect in a murder investigation. We followed him, Penny recounted, to a local restaurant he had lunch with his wife and left a Coke bottle on the table. In a public place, we don't need a warrant. The Coke bottle, a seemingly innocuous piece of litter, became a linchpin. It was taken to the DNA lab. The results came back, a match. The DNA from Miguel Ramirez from the Coke bottle was a perfect match for the unknown male DNA found on the bloody pillow in Agnes Waddleworth's studio. A match, Barnaby bellowed, practically doing a jig in the sheriff's office. The pillow, the DNA, the digital breadcrumbs, all leading to our man. The net. Penny is closing. The interrogation room, a sterile box designed to extract truth, awaited Miguel Ramirez. Barnaby and Penny sat opposite him, a dance of psychological warfare about to begin. Miguel, still unaware of the full extent of the evidence against him, maintained his mild-mannered demeanor. So, Mr. Ramirez, Barnaby began, his voice surprisingly gentle, tell us again about your painting work at Eden Enclave. The decks, the trim, the fascia, boards. Oh, the deck, Miguel confirmed, pointing at photos of the sprawling property. On the big house. Yes, a lot of work there. And I used the bathroom inside. The main house down below. And sometimes in this area here. Barnaby and Penny exchanged a subtle glance. They were subtly leading him, placing him on the property, gauging his familiarity. They wanted to know if he truly knew where Agnes's studio was. They also wanted to observe him, looking for the tiny tells, the micro-expressions, the things that people say that aren't quite true, believing the police are ignorant. Did you know where Agnes stayed, Mr. Ramirez? Penny asked, her voice neutral. Miguel frowned, a picture of innocent confusion. To be honest, I didn't even know she was staying in that area. He continued his story, the same as before. Agnes was nice, gave him tamales. They read scripture together. He knew nothing of her disappearance. The only stuff I heard was from my boss. He insisted that she just disappeared. And that's it. Never heard anything else. Barnaby leaned forward, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. Mr. Ramirez, please don't take this the wrong way, but are you, in any way, involved with Agnes missing? Oh no, Miguel said, a flicker of genuine surprise on his face. No. Any reason why anyone would say that? Well, because there's no reason. Yeah, there's no reason. Now, the pressure was ratcheted up. Mr. Ramirez, Barnaby said, his voice now firm, resonant. We've conducted a very thorough investigation. Thousands of hours. We've been patient. We waited for all the evidence. And what we can now tell you, unequivocally, is that we know you came back. We know a lot of stuff. We're giving you a chance now to change your story, to be honest with us, if you have something else you'd like to tell us. At that moment, Miguel's composure shattered. Barnaby would later describe it as if a mask had simply melted off his face. His body language shifted. He visibly deflated. "Oh my God," Miguel whispered, his voice cracking. "I want to be honest with you guys. I know that I made a mistake. I made a mistake." Barnaby felt his own heart thump. A confession. Finally. But it wasn't what they expected. Miguel, eyes wide with a peculiar blend of remorse and self-preservation, spun a new tale. He admitted he killed Agnes, but claimed it was an accident. He had gone back to Eden Enclave late that night to retrieve a ladder for another job. "I went back to get one of the ladders I'm supposed to be getting for the next job. And then," Penny prompted gently. "And then," Miguel continued, a sob catching in his throat, "I was backing up. And I didn't know she had walked up behind me. I ran her over." "So you're saying you hit her with your car, your truck?" Hum. "And then I took her back in the place, and that's when she collapsed. It was an accident. I hit her. I took her inside to help her." Barnaby and Penny exchanged another glance. An accident. He hit her, then took her inside, and then she collapsed. And then what? The bloody pillow? The missing bedding? The entire carefully orchestrated cover-up? The story was full of holes large enough to drive a tractor through. But it was a start. "Mr. Ramirez," Barnaby said, his voice steely now, "this next question is difficult. How did you have sex with her? I mean, tell me how that transpired." Miguel hesitated, then stammered. I was drunk. "Did she invite you over there?" Penny pressed. "Or did you just show up and—" "No," Miguel insisted. "I just showed up there, just to go and get the ladder. She didn't know I was coming over." "So," Barnaby stated, his tone chilling, "if we know it was not consensual and it was a rape and she's dead, then we have a special circumstance murder case. What you're telling us, Mr. Ramirez, is changing the entire trajectory of this investigation." But they still didn't know one crucial detail. "Where is Agnes? Can we try and see if we can find where you took her?" Penny asked, bringing over an iPad displaying a map of Whispering Willows and its surrounding plains. Miguel looked at the map, then at them. "Would you guys don't mind?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I would like to take you. I would like to take you." The journey to find Agnes Waddleworth's remains was, in typical Barnaby Bates fashion, a darkly comedic odyssey. 2 sheriff's vehicles, followed by Barnaby's battered sedan, snaked their way east from the Templeton substation. The landscape gradually shifted from the manicured vineyards of Paso Robles to the stark, sprawling, almost lunar expanse of the Carrizo Plain, a place where the wind seemed to whisper forgotten secrets across vast, empty spaces. "I'm thinking," Barnaby muttered to himself, "this is going to be a tough find. Even a buried body out here, animals, you see, they have a certain industriousness." Miguel Ramirez, seated in the lead car, was subdued quiet. "I know that you guys are just doing your job," he said, his voice hoarse, "and I wish that I could be forward like a long time ago, because this time it has been killing me." The drive stretched on. An hour. 2. The sun dipped towards the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows across the parched earth. The frustration in the following vehicles was palpable. Miguel would point vaguely, say, "It was something like this," then wave a hand. "And I even remember there was a car coming, and I had to bend down." They stopped at 4 different locations. Each one looked identical to the last. Endless stretches of dry grass, sparse shrubs, and a distinct lack of anything resembling a crime scene. Barnaby, for once, was quiet. Doubt, a rare emotion, for him, began to creep in. "I hadn't brought a jacket," Penny recounted, shivering in the rapidly cooling air. "And I remember thinking, how is anybody ever going to find anything in that grass?" I looked at them, walking in circles, thinking, is Agnes going to be here? Then, at the fifth location, a particularly unremarkable patch of scrubland, Miguel gestured. There's going to be a pile of rocks around her, he said. Barnaby, straining his eyes, scanned the landscape, and then he saw them. 6 or 8 inches of rough-hewn rocks, stacked in a crude circle, utterly out of place in the desolate wilderness. Mr. Ramirez, Barnaby said, turning to him, his voice cracking with emotion. Are those the rocks you're describing? Miguel looked over. His eyes widened. Oh my God, yes. He fell to his knees, sobbing. Barnaby approached the rock circle, and there, stark against the darkening earth, were the scattered remnants of Agnes Wattleworth. A partial leg bone, about 18 inches long, some vertebrae, and, chillingly, a human skull, nestled amidst the rocks. Quite a few remains, fairly close together, Penny observed, her voice tight, with grief and anger, but missing a lot. Because of the animal activity in the area, her remains could be scattered for a mile. It made me feel sad for her family, that she was left in such a remote area by herself in the middle of the night. It always bothered me that he didn't even have the courtesy to bury her. Barnaby, usually composed, found himself incandescent with rage. This was not the dignified end Agnes Wattleworth deserved. This was treacherous, unfeeling wilderness. Miguel, seeing the remains, transformed. He looked back at Barnaby, tears streaming down his face. Can you do me a big favor, Inspector? He pleaded. It depends on what it is, Carlos. Barnaby used his given name, a sign of their strange, grim connection. I wish that you could talk to my little one and tell her that I feel so sorry about this huge mistake I made. Can you please do that? Yeah, Barnaby said, his voice flat. I can do that. Miguel was emotional, appeared contrite. He knew he wasn't going home again. Back at the sheriff's North Station in Templeton, in the sterile interrogation room, Miguel Ramirez finally told the whole truth. Barnaby and Penny had a wealth of tracking data to cross-reference his story against. An animation, compiled from his phone's pings, showed his movements that night. He's traveling up to Whispering Willows, Penny narrated, pointing at the screen. And look, he goes to a church, a commercial building, at almost midnight. Church was not in session, one presumes, Barnaby deadpanned. But there he sat in a church parking lot, chilling evidence, perhaps pondering his next move before heading towards Agnes's house on Highway 46. His phone pinging. Along the way, drawing out this digital map of depravity. The last location data Google got was at 12:14 a.m. The attempted 911 call was at 12:17 a.m. When we got back to the sheriff's North Station, Penny continued, he finally admitted what we had suspected. He came into Agnes's house around 12:15 in the morning. She saw him come in, and then he started telling a different version. The real story. He admitted he went there with the intention of wanting or going to have sex with her. He claimed Agnes had been flirting with him, misinterpreting the tamale and scripture readings as an invitation. He hit her to wake her up, Penny explained, the words chillingly direct, which confirmed the blood spatter on the dresser and walls. And he raped her. So you intended to kill her? Barnaby asked, his voice devoid of emotion. So? But you didn't get caught for the rape, right? Miguel, finally stripped of all his lies, admitted that he suffocated Agnes with a pillow. After you finished having sex with her, Barnaby pressed, how long did it take you to put the pillow over her face? 45 minutes, Miguel mumbled. She couldn't stop her. It was so quick. He later clarified it was 45 minutes he was in the house after. The rape and the smothering was quick. He admitted to raping her, to smothering her to death. But for some reason, he wouldn't admit to hanging up the 911 call. You're sure that when you came in, she didn't try and dial 911 and you took the phone away from her? Penny asked. You know what? Miguel stammered. I don't remember, but I don't think she did. Yeah, I don't think she tried. Are you really sure, Carlos? Barnaby asked, his voice like a razor. I mean, I was drunk, and to be honest, I don't remember. I don't remember that part. How long were you in her house for? I would say 40 minutes, yeah. And what did you do during those 40 minutes after you had sex with her? I want to put it back on the truck on the tailgate, and I just drove away. He confirmed the bedding found on La Vista Lane had been wrapped around Agnes's body, blowing out of his pickup truck as he drove to the Carrizo Plains. Is this the entire truth, Carlos? Barnaby asked one last time. Yes, I'm not even lying anymore. I'm just being honest with you guys. Now I have to pay the consequences. It appeared that he was sad this had happened, and that his confession was in a twisted way, cathartic, bringing him some degree of peace. Would you be willing to write an apology letter to Agnes's children and grandkids? Penny asked. Miguel did. An apology to Agnes's family and one to his own. Then the detectives placed him under arrest. It was a huge relief, Barnaby later confessed, a rare tremor in his voice. This clip brings back a lot of memories. At that moment, justice was going to be served for Agnes Wattleworth. A just resolution to a truly senseless tragedy. He paused, adjusting his monocle. This case, you see, was just a little more personal for me. The sheer audacity of it all. Aurora, Agnes's daughter, still struggled to reconcile the gentle painter with the brutal killer, Miguel Ramirez, she had repeated when Barnaby presented her with his name and photograph. Who's this? We had no idea who it was. How? Could it possibly be the brush? The discovery of her mother's body brought a strange mix of relief and profound sorrow. There was relief, Aurora admitted. I just wanted to find her. We needed to have some closure. There are a lot of people who never get answers. And I was just thankful that we had them. I mean, it's the worst case scenario. But knowing that we found her and she's not suffering anymore, that was a comfort. She paused, her eyes welling up. But still something that's really, it's a hard pill to swallow. It's one of those quiet moments where you start to cry and she just got so cheated. Finally got a chance to relax and do what she wants and retire. And then this happens to her. I just thought, how very, very unfair. The legal proceedings that followed were, in their own way, another layer of dark comedy. Despite the compelling evidence, the confession, the jail calls, the DNA, Miguel Ramirez pleaded not guilty. His defense attorney, a notoriously theatrical man named Sterling, filed a motion to suppress Miguel's recorded interview, arguing that his Miranda warnings should have been given in Spanish, not English. Carlos spoke English with his wife. Barnaby testified, exasperated. He spoke fantastic English. We made sure he understood. The judge thankfully agreed, denying the motion. The case was set for trial in January 2022. On day one, however, Sterling approached the prosecution. My client, he announced with a flourish, wishes to plead to life without parole. He doesn't want to put his family through the publicity of a trial. The catch? Miguel wanted to preserve his right to appeal. The judge, a woman with a dry wit and an even drier patience, proposed a slow plea. The prosecutor would present all the evidence, but the judge, rather than a jury, would find Miguel guilty on all charges. So, Barnaby concluded, the judge reviewed all of the evidence I submitted. The recorded interviews, the jail calls, the Coke bottle DNA, and she found him guilty of first-degree murder and the special circumstance that the murder was committed during a rape. Miguel Ramirez, the mild-mannered painter, the tamale recipient, the secret voyeur, would spend the rest of his life in prison without the possibility of parole. An appropriate sentence, Barnaby declared, folding his arms. Justice in its meandering fashion was ultimately served, though the family, of course, will truly never achieve full closure. How can one, when confronted with such a senseless act? Aurora, addressing Miguel in court, articulated the family's pain, just to let him know how he changed our lives. The fact that he took her life for nothing. Just to let him know that it sickened us, and what was the point? Because now, he's going to live behind bars for the rest of his life for one foolish night. Agnes Waddleworth, despite the brutality of her end, would be remembered. People, Aurora said, remember Agnes as a strong woman with the biggest heart. She survived a lot of heartaches, and it made her stronger, but it made her heart beautiful. The memorial was probably the most beautiful thing. It was out at a vineyard on the way out to Eden Enclave. Hundreds of people, a testament to the person that she was. Photographs of Agnes, laughing with horses, camping with her grandkids, her face alight with joy, were displayed. They really show who she was, Aurora said. Softly, she loved the outdoors, she loved the horses, she loved God. She wanted that to be first in her life, and she wanted people to know that. And her hope that she had to see her kids again. Aurora now rode her mother's horse, Montana, with her own daughter, continuing a cherished tradition. What I once did with my mom, now I do with my daughter. She mused, and that's a good feeling. Every time I ride, I think of my mom, carrying on that beautiful tradition. Inspector Barnaby Bates, in a rare display of sentimentality, still keeps in touch with Aurora, reaching out to her on May 5th of every year, the anniversary of Agnes's death. Miguel Ramirez, true to his word, appealed his conviction. It was denied by the California Court of Appeals in July of 2023. And so, in the quiet town of Whispering Willows, the echoes of a comedic tragedy still linger, a testament to the fact that even in the most serene of settings, the human heart can harbor both unimaginable kindness and unfathomable darkness, often in the most unexpected of places, and that sometimes even a detective who quotes poetry and wears a monocle can, with the help of a Coke bottle and a digital fence, bring a killer to justice. The absurdity you see is often just another facet of the truth. The following story is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. The tone is intended to be comedic and does not, in any way, make light of actual crimes or tragedies. The Grand Misunderstanding, a trial of terrifically topsy-turvy truths. Part 1. The peculiar passing of Bartholomew Barnaby Bumblefoot. The mountain air of Hickory Hollow, usually thick with the scent of pine and artisanal goat cheese, now carried a faint, unsettling whiff of desperation. Cordelia Cody Bumblefoot, a woman whose ambition could outpace a runaway freight train, surveyed her latest acquisition with a gaze that mingled triumph and mild terror. "Barnaby, darling, isn't it rustic?" she chirped, gesturing vaguely at what was less a distressed mansion and more a precariously leaning pile of kindling. Her husband, Bartholomew Barnaby Bumblefoot, a man whose constitution was as delicate as a spun sugar sculpture in a sauna, merely coughed politely into a silk handkerchief. "It certainly is character, Cody Pooh," Barnaby wheezed, adjusting his bespoke ascot. Barnaby was a creature of refined habits and even more refined allergies, a combination that made life with Cody a whirlwind of well-meaning but utterly disastrous schemes, a perpetual tightrope walk. His current ailment, a rare form of seasonal sniffles triggered by the pollen of a particularly aggressive local. Fern had him on a cocktail of obscure herbal supplements and potent, albeit legally dubious, wellness tinctures. Cody, however, saw only potential. This, her latest fix and flip, was going to be her magnum opus, her ticket to proving to everyone in Hickory Hollow that she wasn't just a whirlwind, she was a hurricane of entrepreneurial genius. Her existing real estate empire, Cody's Cozy Corners, was, to put it mildly, more aspirational than actual. Most of her renovations involved liberal applications of bright paint and an unwavering belief that structural integrity was a mere suggestion. The Mid-Slope Manor, as Cody had grandiosely rebranded the Leaning Kindling pile, was meant to be an event venue, a beacon of rustic luxury. But it was bleeding money faster than a goat with a paper cut. The bank was circling her. 3 energetic boys, 10-year-old Dash, 9-year-old Zip, and 6-year-old Zoom, had recently attempted to remodel the kitchen with glitter glue and a power drill, and Barnaby's delicate health seemed to take a nosedive with every new Cody venture. Their financial woes were a closely guarded secret, particularly from Barnaby. Cody had, with the best of intentions, taken out a rather substantial line of credit against Barnaby's prized collection of vintage birdhouses, which he considered his sole, unencumbered asset. He was naturally oblivious. The previous year, their ill-fated cultural immersion trip to the ancient ruins of Greekyland had nearly ended an international incident when Cody, believing Barnaby's prescribed malaria medication needed a natural boost, had slipped him a potent, locally sourced grape elixir. Barnaby, who was strictly forbidden alcohol on his medication, promptly developed a rash resembling a topographical map of the Andes and spent 3 days convinced he was a particularly grumpy Olympian god. He'd later texted his sister, "I think Cody might have accidentally tried to give me a divine fever dream." His sister, bless her literal heart, had taken it as a serious poisoning attempt. Then came Valentine's Day, a mere few weeks before the fateful night. Cody, attempting a romantic gesture, had ordered Barnaby his favorite Bald Mountain bagel, which, a toasted bagel with bacon, egg, cheese, avocado, and sliced tomato. To this, she added a liberal dollop of her homemade aphrodisiac algae spread, a vibrant green concoction she swore boosted virility. Barnaby, after one bite, felt his throat constrict, convinced he was having an allergic reaction to a rogue sesame seed. He jabbed himself with an EpiPen, borrowed from Dash, who had a peanut allergy but was currently eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich without incident, and took a handful of industrial strength antihistamines. He texted his old hiking buddy, "Almost lost me this time. Cody's experimental spreads are getting lethal." Again, misinterpretation reigned supreme. Now, tonight, they were celebrating the Mid-Slope Manor deal. Cody had arranged a special Barnaby's Bespoke Brew, a non-alcoholic cocktail made with exotic berries and a new batch of Sleepy Time gummies she'd acquired from her eccentric friend, Carmi LaCroix. Carmi, a local purveyor of all things alternative wellness, and a fervent believer in the healing power of obscure fungi, had assured Cody these gummies were pure, potent, and guaranteed to induce a transcendental slumber. What Carmi hadn't mentioned was that her pure, potent ingredients were often found growing wild behind the local artisanal goat farm, and occasionally reacted unpredictably with other substances. To Mid-Slope Manor, darling, Cody declared, clinking her glass against Barnaby's. Barnaby managed a weak smile, took a sleepy sip, and chewed his gummy. He was feeling particularly delicate tonight, having recently doubled down on his fern allergy shots and a new, highly restrictive anti-inflammatory diet involving nothing but kale and distilled rainwater. The cocktail, combined with Carmi's mysterious gummy, hit him like a particularly fluffy but insistent pillow. Later that night, at 3:03 a.m., Cody jolted awake. Barnaby was unnervingly still. He was, in her frantic assessment, not breathing and cold to the touch like a forgotten artisanal popsicle. Her 911 call was a symphony of escalating panic and utterly unhelpful details. He's fine. He was just fine. We had a drink. A celebratory drink. My real estate. It's all going to plan. Oh no, the boys. They're asleep. Please. Don't wake them. They have night terrors. They think a badger lives under the bed. Law enforcement arrived. Paramedics swarmed, and the rhythm of a CPR machine filled the air. Barnaby, still stubbornly refusing to breathe, was soon declared deceased. The initial hypothesis was an aneurysm, a tragic but understandable. And for a healthy, albeit perpetually ailing, 39-year-old. The Bumblefoot family, a notoriously dramatic bunch, descended upon Cody's home. Barnaby's sister, Amy, wailed like a banshee, while his other sister, Katie, swooped in to shepherd the bewildered boys upstairs. This celebration of life party quickly devolved into a bizarre wake-come-hootenanny, with Cody leading a tearful, interpretive dance with her sons to Barnaby's favorite country song, "Till You Can't Mow the Lawn," as a projected light from a faulty ceiling fixture formed an angelic halo around them. The solidarity was short-lived. The next morning, fueled by grief and several questionable breakfast mimosas, Amy cornered Cody. The will is in the safe. Barnaby always said it was for his prize-winning miniature schnauzer, sir. Reginald Fluffington III. Cody, who genuinely believed the safe contained nothing but Barnaby's extensive collection of exotic insect specimens, agreed to call a locksmith. As the locksmith drilled, Amy dropped her bombshell. Barnaby had secretly set up a trust, cutting Cody out of everything except a small stipend for responsible schnauzer care. The house, his beloved birdhouses, even the lawn gnome collection were all in the trust, with Katie as executor. A screaming match ensued. Amy accused Cody of trying to steal Sir Reginald Fluffington III's inheritance. Cody, genuinely bewildered and offended, retorted that Amy was delusional. In the ensuing fracas, Cody, attempting to demonstrate a particularly aggressive power pose she'd learned at a flipping your fortune seminar, accidentally elbowed Amy in the face. Cody was arrested and charged with assault, eventually pleading no contest, convinced it was all a grand misunderstanding about the intricacies of high-stakes schnauzer stewardship. Barnaby's funeral was, in a word, awkward. Cody, not wanting to draw attention to herself, opted for a tasteful yet understated ensemble, a shimmering jumpsuit, and no wedding ring. The family divide was palpable with Cody's friends occupying one side of the chapel, and Barnaby's family, who insisted on a horse-drawn hearse, on the other. As the months passed, Cody, ever the entrepreneur, found a new calling. She genuinely struggled to find children's books on grief that resonated with her. Boys' unique experiences. The main question was, will Dad come back as a badger? So, she self-published Are You With My Fungus? A journey through grief with the spirit of a deceased gardener, written with the help of a ghostwriter who mostly transcribed Cody's rambling internal monologues. The book featured a drawing of the Bumblefoot family, including a slightly pale Barnaby and the family's miniature schnauzer. It was a heartfelt, if baffling, tribute Cody's book tour, a series of local radio and TV appearances, was a smashing success. She projected an image of a stoic, if slightly bewildered, grieving widow. "I'm new to all this," she'd often say, dabbing a strategically dry eye. "Try to understand, death and badgers." Then came the anonymous email to the local TV station. She killed her husband. The plot, as they say, thickened. Part 2. The Mysterious Mists of Mill Pond Manor. While Cody was busy promoting her mushroom-themed grief book and battling legal accusations regarding Schnauzer trusts, authorities in Hickory Hollow were quietly digging into Barnaby's peculiar demise. The autopsy report, when it finally arrived, was a masterpiece of misinterpretation. Barnaby's system, it declared, contained 5 times a lethal dosage of an illicitly manufactured compound chemically similar to a rare fungal derivative. The overworked coroner, struggling with a particularly stubborn case of athlete's foot, had mistaken Carmi LaCroix's potent, transcendental slumber gummy for a street drug. Fungal intoxication read the official cause of death. A criminal investigation was launched. Detectives, baffled by the illicit fungal derivative, obtained a search warrant for Cody's home. They seized her electronics, Barnaby's collection of antique garden gnomes, and searched for traces of the mysterious compound. They found none. Cody, genuinely aghast, insisted Barnaby was a man of impeccable taste, incapable of consuming anything less than artisanal. The Bumblefoot family, still smarting from the Schnauzer Trust fiasco, were immediately suspicious. Amy, Barnaby's sister, presented a convoluted financial timeline showing Cody's increasing debt and wild, unsubstantiated claims of millions from her real estate ventures. The image of the all-American perfect family crumbled into a pile of foreclosed properties and unfulfilled dreams. Cody, it turned out, was hemorrhaging money faster than a leaky artisanal cheese. That. One of Cody's biggest financial burdens was the Midslope Manor. It needed a couple million-inch in repairs, and Cody was relying on a series of hard money loans so risky they made actual loan sharks look like benevolent philanthropists. The manor, far from finished, was eventually lost to foreclosure. Meanwhile, investigators learned of Barnaby's previous incidents, the Greekland divine fever dream, and the Valentine's Day lethal algae spread. They began to suspect a pattern. A private investigator hired by Barnaby's family pulled Cody's phone records. 3 names appeared repeatedly: Barnaby before his death, her mother, and Carmi LaCroix. Carmi, who worked as a part-time house harmonizer, glorified cleaning service for Cody's properties, had a colorful past involving several unlicensed horticultural experiments and a few run-ins with the local Natural Path Enforcement Agency. Detective Jeffrey, the Bloodhound O'Driscoll, took over the case. His first move, dumpster diving. He found Carmi's trash filled with peculiar mushroom caps and vials labeled fungus fuel. A search of Carmi's home revealed an entire wall dedicated to inspirational mycological sayings and taped to a mirror a copy of Barnaby's obituary. Carmi, it turned out, collected obituaries of anyone who had died from unexplained natural phenomena, believing they held clues to interdimensional portals. Facing legal trouble for her horticultural experiments, Carmi sang like a psychedelic canary. She told police that Cody had asked her to procure stronger slumber solutions on 2 separate occasions. The first batch, she claimed, wasn't potent enough to induce true astral projection. She had sourced the slumber solutions from a local herbal alchemist named Rusty Crozier. Rusty, already in custody for illegally selling moon-dusted healing crystals, corroborated Carmi's story with a few caveats. He claimed he sold Carmi Rossi's, a local slang for a particularly potent strain of fermented goats milk, not any fungal derivative. But the timing was suspicious. 30 text messages between Carmi and Cody on Valentine's Day, and another flurry just before Barnaby's death. The net was closing in. The fungal intoxication, the mounting debt, the alleged stronger slumber solutions. It was enough. Cody Bumblefoot was arrested and charged with 1 count of aggravated fungicidal murder and 3 counts of possession of questionable organic compounds with intent to distribute. The headline screamed, Hickory Hollow Mom, author of Are You With My Fungus, charged with spousal murder. The community was divided. Some believed Cody was a monster, others an accidental culinary terrorist. Part 3. The Grand Misunderstanding, a trial of terrifically topsy-turvy truths. The legal saga of Cordelia Cody Bumblefoot had all the makings of a grim melodrama, except it was unfolding like a particularly deranged farce. Cody, now clad in a stylish orange jumpsuit, sat in the Summit Peak County courtroom, an expression of bewildered confidence plastered across her face. Her new defense team, the formidable duo of Sky Lozaro and Kathy Nestor, looked less confident. The prosecution, led by the perpetually intense Brad Bloodworth, laid out their case with a flourish. The evidence will prove that on the day Barnaby Bumblefoot ingested a fatal dose of fungal derivative Cordelia Bumblefoot, owed over 4.5 million acorns to various lenders, that she was chronically unhappy in her marriage, that she murdered Barnaby for his birdhouse collection, and a fresh start at life. The defense, countered with Cody's 911 call, played for the jury. Her voice, say, panic squeak, seemed to embody the sounds of a wife grappling with a particularly stubborn casserole, not a cold-blooded killer. Somewhere in those 6 hours, Ms. Nestor declared, Barnaby ingested something, but there is zero evidence of how that something got inside him or that it was anything more than a mislabeled organic wellness product. Carmi LaCroix, the first witness, took the stand. She laid out her entire history of horticultural experimentation and alternative wellness procurement for the jury, her testimony punctuated by dramatic sighs and references to celestial alignments. She insisted she genuinely thought she was helping Cody achieve deeper states of relaxation for Barnaby. Next, Rusty Crozier, the herbal alchemist, testified from behind a thick pane of plexiglass, still detoxing from his moon-dusted crystal habit. He admitted selling Carmi Rossi's fermented goat's milk, but swore he never peddled anything more nefarious. Under cross-examination, he confessed to being a bit fuzzy on the details, having been in a higher vibrational state at the time. Then came the emotional testimony from Cody's longtime friend, Becky Lloyd. Becky, a no-nonsense goat farmer, recounted